Welcome back to Mia Horror Stories. Tonight's tale, the voice on my baby monitor is calling me Dad, is best experienced in the dark, which is why the screen will stay black. No distractions, no flashing images, just you, your imagination, and the story. So sit back, relax, and listen all the way to the end, if you dare. The monitor crackled the way it always did when the microwave was running. A dry burst of static that made the little green LED blink like it was thinking about dying, and then deciding not to. I didn't look up at first. I was elbow deep in the sink, coaxing dried formula residue out of a bottle with a brush that always smelled faintly of dish soap, no matter how many times we rinsed it. The kitchen light above the sink had that buzz it got when the bulb was close to going out, a high mosquito whine that lived at the edge of hearing until you noticed it and then couldn't stop noticing it. The microwave beeped. The monitor popped again. Then a voice came through, thin, compressed, like someone talking into a paper cup. Dad. I froze with the bottle halfway under the tap. The water kept running. The brush handle squeaked in my grip. My brain tried to do the quickest, dumbest math. It grabbed at the first explanation like a handhold. Feedback. Neighbor's monitor. Baby sounds turning into syllables. The weird way cheap speakers will pull consonants out of noise if you're already thinking about them. But it wasn't a baby sound. It was a person, not loud, not theatrical, just casual, like someone calling from the other room to make sure you heard them. Dad, it said again. In the living room, the monitor sat on the coffee table between a stack of mail and the remote we were always losing. The screen showed the nursery, dim, gray-green from night vision, the corner of the crib, the outline of the rocking chair. Nothing moved. No little limbs flailing, no blanket shifting. Our daughter was a lump under her sleep sack, the white noise machine doing its steady ocean hush. The voice came again, and this time it added the smallest inhale beforehand, like it was about to say more. Dad. I shut off the tap too hard. The sudden absence of water made the whole room feel louder. My hands were wet and soapy, and shaking in a way I didn't want to admit was shaking. Emily, I called, keeping my voice normal on purpose, like normal was a thing you could decide. From the hallway, our bedroom door clicked open. Footsteps on the hardwood, then the soft shush of slippers. Emily appeared, hair up in a messy knot, one of my sweatshirts hanging off her shoulder because it was cold near the windows, even with the heat on. She had that look she'd had for months, tired, but wired inside it. Like the tired was a coat she couldn't take off. What? She whispered automatically, because we had trained ourselves to whisper in our own home. I nodded toward the coffee table without speaking. The monitor was still hissing with white noise and the occasional static tick. Emily leaned in, squinting at the screen. What am I? The speaker crackled. Dad. Emily's eyes snapped to mine. Not fear right away. First confusion, then the tiny crease between her eyebrows that meant she was trying to solve it. She reached for the monitor, as if bringing it closer to her face would make the audio clearer. That's, she started and stopped. It sounded like, I said. Don't say it, she said, and then she hated that she'd said it because it made it real. She swallowed and tried again. It sounded like a man. The voice didn't come again. It went back to the ocean hush, the little static ticks like someone tapping a fingernail against plastic. Emily turned the monitor over, like the voice might be stuck under it. She checked the volume wheel on the side, the power cord. Her fingers were quick, competent. She had always been the competent one between us, the one who read manuals and kept track of receipts and knew which drawer the batteries were in. "It's picking up interference," she said. "These things, there are stories. People hear other people's monitors. It's a frequency thing." "Stories," I repeated. My mouth tasted like dish soap. Emily shot me a look that said, "Don't spiral. Not now. Not in the kitchen. Not with her asleep." "I'm not spiraling," I said, which was a lie because my chest already had that tight, almost nauseous flutter that came right before my thoughts started running ahead of me. Emily moved toward the hallway. "I'm going to check her." "I'll go," I said too fast, and she paused, looking at me. In that pause, a lot happened without anyone saying it. Since Mara was born, I'd been trying to be useful in ways that didn't require being brave. I could do bottles. I could do laundry. I could watch YouTube videos about how to install baby gates and then install them slightly crooked. When Mara cried in a way that sounded like pain, or when she had a fever and her skin felt too hot, I would feel something animal and helpless rise up in me, and Emily would step in. Not because she didn't trust me, because she did, and she didn't have time to let me learn slowly. I knew my flaw. I'd never said it out loud, but I carried it like a pebble in my shoe. That I could love something completely and still freeze when it needed me. Emily's gaze softened a fraction. "Okay," she whispered. "You go." She gestured at the monitor, at the coffee table, at the room, at the whole problem. I wiped my hands on my jeans and walked down the hallway. Our house was a small cape in Waltham, Massachusetts, 2 streets off Main, close enough that you could hear traffic if you stood on the porch long enough. It had been built in the 40s, and it creaked in winter when the wood shrank. At night, if you listened, you could hear the radiator in the nursery tick as it cooled and heated, like it was trying to talk. Mara's door was half closed. We kept it that way so the cat wouldn't sneak in and sleep in the crib. The air in the hallway was cooler, smelling faintly of the diaper pail and baby lotion, and the stale coffee we'd forgotten to throw out earlier. I pushed the door open with 2 fingers and stepped into the nursery. The nightlight in the shape of a cloud cast a weak amber glow across the walls. Everything looked softer in it. The shelves with board books and stuffed animals. The changing table with the little caddy of wipes. The rocking chair with the blanket draped over it like a person had just stood up. Mara was asleep. Her cheeks were flushed with that healthy sleep warmth. Her mouth was open in a tiny O. Her hands were near her face, fists loose. I stood there longer than necessary, listening. The white noise machine did its steady whoosh. The radiator clicked once. The house settled, a far-away pop from somewhere in the walls. No other voices. No movement. I leaned over the crib, careful not to cast too big a shadow on her face. "Mara," I whispered, even though she couldn't answer. My breath was warm on my own lips. "Hey, Peanut." She didn't stir. I backed away, and the floorboard by the dresser complained with a sharp squeak that made my shoulders jump. I held my breath and watched her, waiting for her eyes to flutter, for the little pre-cry face to form. Nothing. She stayed asleep. On the dresser, the baby monitor camera sat on its little stand, aimed at the crib. It was a simple unit with a black lens like an eye. We'd bought it because it was Wi-Fi, because Emily had read about people hacking cameras and didn't want our kid on the internet. It transmitted to the handheld screen in the living room, old school radio frequency. That had felt safer. Now, I stared at the camera and felt stupid for trusting anything just because it didn't connect to an app. I reached out and gently turned the camera a few degrees, not enough to change the view much, just enough to break whatever mental picture I had of it. I checked the cord. It was plugged into the outlet behind the dresser, the cable neatly zip-tied because Emily couldn't stand dangling wires. Everything normal. When I left the nursery, I pulled the door back to its half-closed position, and I paused in the hallway with my hand still on the knob, listening again like that would give me an answer. I walked back to the living room. Emily was still by the coffee table. She picked up the monitor and was flipping through settings, even though there weren't really settings, just volume and a channel switch on the back. Her finger hovered over the tiny slider labeled ABCD anything, she whispered. "She's asleep," I said. "Did it do it again?" Emily shook her head. "No," but she slid the channel switch from A to B. The sound changed slightly, the white noise becoming a different texture, like a different kind of ocean. Static popped once. She frowned. "We've always had it on A. Why are there channels?" I asked. "So you don't pick up someone else's," she said, but her voice didn't sound as sure as she wanted it to. The room felt oddly exposed, like the curtains weren't fully closed even though they were. Outside, the streetlight cast pale stripes across the snow piled along the curb. A car went by, tires hissing on wet pavement. Emily set the monitor down and rubbed her face with both hands. "Okay," she said. "Okay. It's probably interference. Someone nearby has a similar unit, or a ham radio guy, or I don't know, anything." "Ham radio guys," I repeated, because it was ridiculous, and also because I needed something I could laugh at later. But my laugh didn't come. Emily looked at the baby monitor again, like it might speak if she stared hard enough. I sat on the edge of the couch and tried to make my voice light. "Maybe the microwave did something." "It's not connected to the microwave," she said, then immediately softened because she could hear the edge in her own tone. "Sorry, I mean maybe. It could be electrical noise. The transformer outside, the weather." "The weather made a man say, 'Dad'?" I asked. Emily's eyes flicked up. "Don't." I held up a hand. "I'm not trying to, you are," she said, quieter. "You're doing the thing where you push it until it breaks, because if it breaks, then you can react. But if it stays in the maybe, you sit in it." The accuracy of that hit me like a palm to the chest. My private fear, the one I didn't tell her because it sounded pathetic, was that I wouldn't be the kind of father who acted. When something came for our family, something real, something human, something that didn't announce itself, I would be too slow, too polite, too reasonable. Emily exhaled, then reached across the coffee table and squeezed my wrist. Her fingers were warm, her nails bitten down short. "We can call someone," she whispered. Not 911, but like non-emergency. "Ask if anyone's reported interference." Or, she swallowed, "or we can just change the channel and see if it happens again." On the monitor, the nursery image was steady. Mara was still asleep. The green LED blinked on and off like a calm heartbeat. A part of me wanted to do nothing, to treat this like a weird blip, a glitch, a one-time fluke we'd tell friends about someday with a shrug and a laugh. You know how those monitors are. Another part of me, the part I didn't like because it made everything harder, pictured a person somewhere close enough to reach into our house with sound. It pictured someone testing the edge of us, seeing what we did. Emily looked at the phone on the end table like it might bite her. If we call, she said, it becomes a thing, like a file, a report. If we don't call, I said, it's just us and the monitor. We sat there in that thin slice of time where you can still choose to keep your life the same. The monitor crackled once, sharp and bright, and both of us snapped our attention to it. Nothing followed, just the ocean hush. Emily's thumb hovered over her phone screen, not dialing yet. "What do you want to do?" she asked, and the question was small, but it was also a test. I stared at the baby monitor, at the quiet nursery, at the idea that someone else had been in that sound with us for a second. A second was enough. "We can switch channels," I said slowly, "and we can check the manual to see if it's supposed to, I don't know, scan or lock. But also," I swallowed, "also I think we should call the non-emergency line, just to ask what they recommend. No drama, just advice." Emily looked relieved and annoyed at the same time, like she wanted me to have said that immediately, and also like she hated that we were here at all. She nodded. "Okay," she whispered. "Okay, I'll call." She unlocked her phone, and then she hesitated, her finger hovering over the keypad, because once you press the first number, you can't pretend you didn't hear it. The monitor sat between us, steady and silent, waiting like it had patience. We had to decide whether we were the kind of parents who wrote this off, or the kind who made it real. Emily's finger lowered toward the screen. Emily pressed the first number. Before she could finish dialing, the monitor let out a sharp burst of feedback, louder than before, a jagged shriek that made both of us flinch. The white noise cut out entirely for half a second. The nursery image on the screen flickered, rolled once like an old TV losing signal, then snapped back. And then the voice came again, clearer this time, closer to the mic. "Dad, I see you." Emily dropped the phone onto the couch like it had burned her. I felt something cold and electric run up the back of my neck, not dramatic, just a clean jolt, like when you miss a stare in the dark. The nursery image on the monitor didn't change. Mara was still asleep. The rocking chair hadn't moved. The cloud nightlight glowed steady. But the voice hadn't sounded like interference. It had sounded positioned. "I see you." Emily's breathing had gone shallow. "That's not," she started, then stopped. "That's not random." "No," I said, my mouth was dry. "No, it's not." The white noise hissed back to life, steady and indifferent. Emily grabbed the monitor and turned the volume down, then back up, like she could shake something loose. "Okay," she said quickly, words stacking over each other. "Okay. That's not a baby monitor crossing signals. That's someone is transmitting. That's a transmitter." "To what?" I asked, though I already knew. "To us," she said. The room felt smaller. The couch, the coffee table, the windows with the blinds pulled tight, they all felt like props instead of protection. I stood up too fast and nearly knocked my knee into the table. "I'm going back in there." Emily caught my wrist. "Wait, why?" "Because if someone can see you," she said carefully, "it's through the camera, not through the room." That landed. I looked at the monitor screen. The night vision glow showed the crib, the dresser, a slice of wall. It did not show the doorway. I leaned over the crib, I said slowly. I was right in front of the camera. Emily nodded once. "Okay," she said. "Okay, we unplug it." "What?" "We unplug the camera, right now." I didn't argue. I was already halfway down the hall again. The house felt louder now. The radiator ticking in the nursery sounded sharper. My own breathing felt too big for the hallway. I pushed open the nursery door and went straight to the dresser. I didn't look at the crib this time. I didn't want to split my attention. The camera sat there, black lens aimed exactly where it always had. I grabbed the cord and yanked it from the outlet. In the living room, I heard the monitor give one last hiss of static, then silence. I waited. Nothing. I picked up the camera and turned it in my hands, like it might reveal a secret seam. It was warm from being plugged in, plastic smooth and unremarkable. I unplugged the white noise machine too, just in case. Mara stirred at the sudden quiet. Her eyelids fluttered. I winced. "Hey," I whispered, softer now, instinct taking over. "It's okay." She shifted once, made a tiny throat sound, and settled. I carried the camera into the hallway. Emily was standing where I'd left her, but she looked different now, tighter, like she'd pulled something inward. "It's unplugged," I said. She glanced at the monitor in her hands. The screen was black. No signal message in small white letters. "Okay," she said. "Okay." The silence between us wasn't empty. It was full of questions we didn't want to articulate. Emily picked up her phone again. "Now I'm calling." She dialed the non-emergency line for Waltham PD. I could hear the faint ring through the speaker. "Waltham Police non-emergency," a woman's voice answered, brisk and tired at the same time. "Hi," Emily said, and I could hear the strain she was trying to smooth out. "My name is Emily Hale. We live on," she gave our street name. "We have a baby monitor, and someone just spoke through it." There was a pause on the other end. "Spoke through it how, ma'am?" A man's voice. He said, "Dad, I see you." Another pause. I imagined the dispatcher typing, the click of keys. "Is anyone in your home that shouldn't be?" "No," Emily said quickly. "My husband just checked the nursery. Our daughter is asleep." "Do you have any Wi-Fi enabled cameras in the home?" "No," Emily said, sharper now. "It's a radio frequency monitor, not connected to the internet." "All right," the dispatcher said. "It's possible someone nearby is on the same frequency. It happens occasionally with older units. I can have an officer swing by to take a report if you'd like." Emily looked at me. I nodded. "Yes," she said into the phone. "Please." "What's your date of birth?" the dispatcher asked. While Emily answered, I went to the front window and peeled one blind slat down with 2 fingers. The street was quiet. Snow piled in uneven mounds along the sidewalks. A blue sedan sat parked across the street under the streetlight, thin frost on its windshield. It hadn't been there earlier. I tried to rewind my memory. Had I noticed it when I came home from work? Maybe. It wasn't an unusual car. Waltham had plenty of blue sedans. The dispatcher finished with Emily and said an officer would be there within 15 minutes. 15 minutes, Emily repeated after hanging up, like it was a number we could hold on to. I nodded, still staring at the sedan. "Do you recognize that car?" I asked. Emily joined me at the window. She squinted through the blinds. "Which one?" "The blue one." She shook her head. "No, but that doesn't mean—" "I know," I said. "I know." We stood there longer than necessary, trying not to make the act of looking obvious. Then, from the darkened monitor screen on the coffee table, still powered, just not receiving, a soft pop sounded. Not a voice, just a faint electronic click, like a connection trying and failing. Emily looked at it. "It's still on." "Turn it off," I said. She pressed and held the power button. The screen went fully black. For a second, I felt something like relief. And then the doorbell rang. It was too soon. We both jumped. Emily's hand flew to her chest. "No way, that's the cop," she whispered. I glanced at the clock on the microwave in the kitchen. 12:18 a.m. The doorbell rang again, not aggressive, just a polite second press. I walked toward the front door slowly, every step measured. I didn't turn on the porch light. Instead, I leaned toward the narrow window beside the door and angled myself so I could see without being fully visible. A man stood on the porch. White, mid-40s maybe. Dark jacket. Knit cap pulled low. He held something small in his hand. He looked straight at the door. Then, without raising his voice, he said, "Hey, sorry to bother you this late." My stomach clenched. Emily was behind me now. "Who is it?" she whispered. I didn't answer her. I called through the door, trying to keep my voice steady. "Yeah." The man shifted his weight, breath visible in the cold air. "I think I've got your frequency," he said. "My monitor's picking up your kid." I heard a man's voice. "Thought I should come over." The words were normal, reasonable, even neighborly. But the timing pressed in on me. "You heard a man's voice?" I asked. "Yeah," he said. Sounded like he was talking to someone. Figured I'd let you know before it freaked my wife out. Emily's fingers dug into my arm. I pictured the voice. "Dad, I see you." "You live," I prompted. "2 houses down," he said, gesturing vaguely to the right. Blue cape with the basketball hoop. I couldn't see that from here. He lifted his hand slightly. In it was a baby monitor unit, the same brand as ours. "That's what I mean," he said. "These things cross all the time." It was plausible, painfully plausible. "Can you switch channels?" he asked. I just did, and it stopped. "You might want to too." Emily leaned close to my ear. "We unplugged it," I nodded. Through the door, I said, "Thanks, we unplugged ours." The man smiled faintly. It didn't reach his eyes. "Good," he said. "Just wanted to make sure." He didn't leave immediately. He stood there for another second, 2, long enough for the quiet between us to stretch thin. "You all right in there?" he asked. I didn't like that. "We're fine," I said. He nodded once, then stepped back off the porch. His boots crunched in the snow. I stayed at the door until I heard the faint slam of a car door. A car engine turned over. Emily rushed to the window. "Is that the blue sedan?" I lifted the blind again. The blue sedan's headlights flicked on. It pulled away slowly, tires whispering over slush, and disappeared down the street. Emily let out a shaky breath. That's probably it. Right, he heard us. We heard him, crossed signals. I didn't answer. Because if that were true, the voice would have been coming from his unit. Meaning when it said, "I see you," it wasn't a neighbor randomly overlapping. It was directed, and he had known our exact house. 15 minutes suddenly felt too long. Emily turned toward me. "We told the police someone was transmitting," she said. "Now there's a guy with the same monitor parked across the street. 2 houses down," I corrected automatically. "Ethan." I ran a hand through my hair. "I don't like that he didn't knock earlier. If he heard us first. Maybe he just..." A sharp, metallic bang echoed from the back of the house. Not loud enough to be catastrophic. Loud enough to be wrong. We both froze. The sound had come from the direction of the kitchen. The back door. Another noise followed, a faint scrape, like something dragging lightly against metal. Emily's face drained of color. "We locked the back door," she whispered. I swallowed. I did. The radiator ticked. The house settled. And then, unmistakable this time, the back door handle turned. Slowly. Once. Twice. Testing. Emily's hand found mine in the dark. The police were still minutes away. And whoever had just been on our porch was no longer across the street. The back door handle turned again. Not violently. Not like someone trying to kick it in. Just a careful, deliberate twist. Metal on metal. A soft, mechanical complaint. Emily's nails dug into my palm. "Call them back," I whispered. "I'm already on it." Her hands shook, as she pulled up the recent call and hit redial. I moved toward the kitchen slowly, each step placed so the old floorboards wouldn't give us away with that familiar complaint. The house was laid out simply: living room at the front, hallway down the center, kitchen in the back left corner, the back door set into the wall beside the sink. A narrow window over the sink looked out onto our tiny backyard, a patch of snow, a sagging fence, the detached garage we never used for the car because it was too tight. The kitchen was darker than the living room. Only the stove clock glowed green, 12:27. The handle turned again, then stopped. I stood just out of view of the small square window in the door. My heart was pounding hard enough that I could feel it in my throat. Emily's voice carried softly from behind me. "Yes, hi, we just called about the monitor. There's someone at our back door now. They're trying the handle." The dispatcher's voice was tinny but audible. "Officers are en route. Stay inside. Make sure all doors are locked." "They're locked," Emily said. The handle gave a harder jerk. The door didn't budge. I reached for the deadbolt and twisted it tighter, even though it was already fully engaged. The metal was cold under my fingers. Outside, snow crunched, then silence. I leaned slightly toward the sink window, careful not to silhouette myself. The backyard was mostly shadow. The porch light didn't reach that far. The neighbor's yard light cast a faint wash over the fence, enough to see the top rail and the sagging section near the right corner. Something moved along the fence line. Low, quick. I tensed. And then the shape darted into the light. A raccoon. It paused on top of the fence, staring toward the house with bright, reflective eyes. Its breath puffed in the cold air. Then it scrambled down into our yard and disappeared behind the garage. I exhaled through my teeth. Emily appeared in the kitchen doorway. "They're 2 minutes out," she whispered. "Okay." We both stood there, listening for another attempt at the handle. Nothing. "Maybe he ran when he heard you on the phone," she said. "Or when he realized it was locked." Emily's jaw tightened. The house felt different now. Not ours, not safe. Every small noise, the refrigerator kicking on, the tick of cooling pipes, felt like a signal. A red and blue flash washed faintly across the kitchen ceiling. We both turned toward the front of the house. Through the living room blinds, light strobed across the walls. "They're here," Emily breathed. The relief hit too fast. It made my knees weak. I walked to the front door and opened it before the officer could knock. 2 cruisers sat at the curb, lights spinning but sirens off. Snow glowed pink and blue under the wash. A tall black man in his early 30s stepped onto the porch. He wore a knit cap pulled low and had the calm posture of someone used to walking into other people's panic. "Evening," he said. "Officer Grant. You're Mr. Hale?" "Yes," I said. Behind him, a shorter white woman in her late 20s, Officer Rinaldi, according to the name patch on her jacket, circled toward the side of the house with a flashlight already raised. "You reported someone attempting entry?" Grant asked. "Yes," I said. "Back door. And earlier someone came to the front door saying he had our baby monitor frequency." Grant's eyebrows lifted slightly. "Okay, let's start at the beginning." While Emily filled him in, voice steady now that someone official was there, I walked him through the house. Living room, hallway, nursery door half closed, kitchen at the back. Grant checked the back door. He crouched slightly, examining the handle and deadbolt with his flashlight. "No visible damage," he said. "No pry marks. Doesn't mean he didn't try it," Emily said. I'm not saying that, Grant replied calmly. Just telling you what I see. Aldi came in through the side gate and rapped lightly on the kitchen window before entering through the back porch door we never used. Fence lines clear, she said. Fresh footprints, though. My stomach dropped. Fresh, I asked. Within the last hour, she said. Snow's still crisp around the edges. They come from the street, along the side of the house, stop at the back door, then head back out. Grant looked at me. Anyone you're having issues with, X, neighbor dispute? No, I said quickly. Nothing like that. Blue sedan, Emily added, parked across the street. Grant nodded toward Rinaldi. Plate, she shook her head. Didn't see one parked out there now. I stepped back toward the front window and peeked out. The street was empty. The blue sedan was gone. They left when you pulled up, I said. Grant gave a small nod. That's common. He straightened. All right. Here's what we can do. We'll file a report. We'll canvass the immediate neighbors, see if anyone matches the description. In the meantime, I recommend upgrading your monitor. RF units can be picked up by anyone with the same model. Can someone talk through it? Emily asked. Grant hesitated a fraction. If they have a similar unit and know how to manipulate the channels, yes. It's possible. Manipulate, I repeated. He met my eyes. It's not common, but it's possible. The words didn't comfort me. We walked back to the living room. Grant took down our information. Rinaldi stepped outside again to check the side yard one more time. Emily hovered near the nursery door, listening for any change in Mara's breathing. Grant finished writing. We'll patrol the area for a bit, he said. If you hear or see anything else, call immediately. Should we stay somewhere else tonight? Emily asked. Grant considered. That's up to you. There's no sign of forced entry. Could be a neighbor messing around. Could be someone testing doors. Unfortunately, that happens. Testing doors. The phrase lodged in my chest. They left 5 minutes later. The cruisers rolled away, lights off now. The house went quiet again. Too quiet. Emily locked the front door and leaned her forehead against it for a second. I hate that they can't just fix it, she whispered. I checked every lock in the house. Front door, back door, side porch, basement bulkhead outside. When I came back in through the kitchen, I stopped cold. The back door. The deadbolt was still engaged, but the small latch on the inside, the little flip lock we rarely used, was hanging loose. I was certain I had flipped it down earlier. Emily, I called softly. She came into the kitchen. What? The latch, she frowned. You locked it. I did. She stepped closer. The latch was up, not down. Maybe when the officer checked it, she offered. He didn't touch that. We stood there staring at a piece of metal the size of my thumb like it was a clue in a murder trial. Okay, Emily said finally. Okay. We're not doing this. We're tired. We're filling in blanks. She was right. It had been a long week. Mara had been teething. We were both running on fragments of sleep. Let's stay up, I said. Take shifts, Emily nodded. You first. I'll sit with her. She went into the nursery and closed the door almost all the way. I sat at the kitchen table with the lights off, only the stove clock glowing. I held a heavy cast iron skillet in my lap because it felt better than holding nothing. My phone buzzed. I nearly dropped the pan. Unknown number. I stared at it. Emily's voice drifted faintly from the nursery, humming under her breath. The phone buzzed again. I answered. Hello, silence. Not empty silence, breathing, faint. Then the line clicked dead. I stared at the screen. No voicemail. My hands were sweating. I stepped quietly to the front window and lifted the blind again. Nothing. Street empty. Snow undisturbed. And then, As I watched, the porch light flicked off. I hadn't turned it off. I spun toward the switch by the door. It was down, off. I looked back outside. The porch was dark. My brain scrambled for the simplest explanation. Faulty wiring, old house, loose connection. And then I heard it. A faint, tinny sound from the living room. I moved slowly toward it. The powered-down baby monitor sat on the coffee table. Its screen was still black, but from its speaker, barely audible, "Dad." My stomach dropped so hard it felt like falling down an elevator shaft. It was off. I lunged for it and flipped it over. The power light was dark, the battery compartment on the back still in place, and yet the speaker crackled again. "Dad," not loud, not urgent, just there. Emily stepped out of the nursery, eyes wide. "Did you hear?" "Yes." I pressed and held the power button again. Nothing changed. "Take the batteries out," she said. My fingers fumbled with the compartment. The cover popped off. I yanked the batteries free. The monitor went completely dead. Silence. We both stood there breathing hard. "That's not possible," Emily whispered. I didn't respond, because as I straightened, I noticed something else. The nursery door. It was wider than she'd left it, not open, but not nearly closed. Emily followed my gaze. "I didn't," she began. We both turned slowly toward the hallway. From the nursery, a new sound drifted out. Not white noise, not the radiator. Mara was crying, not her sleepy whimper. Full, sharp, panicked cries. Emily ran. I followed close behind. She reached the crib first and scooped Mara up. It's okay," she murmured. I scanned the room. The camera sat on the dresser, unplugged, but angled differently, pointed toward the doorway now, directly where someone would stand to look in. I felt something inside me snap into focus. "Emily," I said quietly. "We can't stay here." She clutched Mara tighter. "Where do we go?" "Anywhere," I said. "Hotel, my parents, anywhere." She hesitated. And in that hesitation, the basement door at the end of the hallway creaked open. Slow, deliberate, the dark gap widened inch by inch. We both stared at it. The basement was unfinished. Concrete floor, furnace, old shelving. One narrow window at ground level. No reason for that door to open. No draft, no cat. It opened another inch. Retreat was no longer an option. Someone was already inside the house. The basement door opened another inch. The hinge gave a dry, complaining squeal, like it hadn't been moved in months, and resented being asked now. Emily stood in the nursery doorway with Mara clutched against her chest. Mara's cry had gone hoarse and wet, the kind of cry that scraped at you because you could hear her throat getting raw. Emily's face was set in that concentrated, practical way she got when she was scared and trying to outthink it. I had the cast iron skillet in my right hand. My left was empty and useless, fingers spread like I could stop something with air. "Back," I whispered. Emily didn't move. She stared at the widening seam of darkness at the end of the hall. The basement staircase ran straight down from that door, old wooden steps, narrow, steep, the kind you took carefully when you were carrying laundry. The basement itself was unfinished concrete, furnace, and shelving. One small ground-level window that looked out under the front porch. I'd pictured it 100 times while paying our heating bill, but not like this. Not as a place where someone could stand below us and listen. Another inch. Mara wailed, sharp. And then softly, so softly it made my skin tighten, there was a sound from the basement. Breathing. Not the radiator, not a draft. A person, taking in air through their nose like they were trying not to make noise. Emily's eyes met mine. My throat tried to close on instinct. "Ethan," she whispered, and there was something in her voice I'd never heard directed at me before, an expectation, not a plea. "Do it. Be the person you keep promising you are." I swallowed. "Get Mara to the front," I said quietly, like we were talking about taking the trash out. "Lock yourselves in the car. Don't wait for me." Emily's jaw tightened. "No, Emily. What if he's between us and the front?" I hadn't thought that far. I'd only thought, basement door open, danger inside, move baby away. My brain had been chasing the simplest line. I took a step into the hall, toward the basement door. The floorboard by the dresser squeaked high and sharp, and I hated it, hated the way the house betrayed us with its little familiar sounds. The basement door stopped moving. Silence. Then a voice drifted up from below, calm as a weather report, muffled by the stairwell. "Hey," it said, not through electronics, not tinny, not compressed, real air, real throat. Emily made a strangled sound, half gasp, half suppressed scream. The voice continued, "You don't have to make this harder." I felt my hands go colder around the skillet handle. "Who are you?" I called, and my voice cracked on the last word, a pause. Then, like he was answering someone at a counter, the voice said, "I told you, I'm 2 houses down." It was him, the man from the porch. The same casual tone, the same polite confidence, like if he sounded reasonable, our brains would do the rest and call this a misunderstanding. Emily's nails dug into Mara's sleep sack. Mara's cries hiccuped, exhausted. "Get out of my house," I said. The voice laughed once. Not loud, just a small exhale of amusement. "You already did," it said, and for a second, I didn't understand what he meant. Then the porch light being off, the back latch flipped. The camera angle pieces that had floated as separate wrongnesses snapped into alignment. He hadn't been outside and then inside. He'd been managing both at different times, testing, mapping, making sure we do predictable things. "Ethan," Emily whispered from behind me. "Call 911. My phone, I started, and realized my phone was in the kitchen on the table where I'd been sitting with the skillet in my lap. I'd left it there after the silent call. "Go," Emily hissed. "Go now." The basement door creaked again, not opening, not closing, someone leaning against it from the other side. Testing how much it gave, I took a step backward. Another floorboard squeaked. The voice below said, almost gently, "That's a loud floor." Emily made a sound like she'd been hit. He knew our house. I turned my head slightly, just enough to look at Emily, without taking my eyes off the basement door. "Stay in the nursery," I mouthed. She shook her head hard. "No." Mara's crying dropped suddenly to a tired, ragged whine. The abruptness made it worse. It meant she was running out of steam. It meant she'd been scared long enough. I backed toward the kitchen, moving slow, keeping the skillet up like a shield. Emily followed me, close, shoulder brushing my arm, because the hallway was narrow, and we were trying to occupy the same space without making noise. When we reached the kitchen doorway, I angled myself so I could see the hall and the basement door at the same time. "Emily," I whispered, "get your phone. Call. My phone's in the living room," she whispered back, and we both froze, because of course it was. She'd dropped it earlier on the couch when the voice came through the monitor. She'd never picked it up again after the police left. All our objects were in all the wrong places now, scattered by panic. The basement door moved. Not a slow inch this time. It opened, steady and controlled. A wedge of darkness spilled into the hall. A flashlight beam lanced up, sweeping once across the wall, the framed photo of Mara in the hospital bassinet, Emily's coat hanging by the closet. The beam cut off. Then the man stepped onto the bottom stair, just within view. He wore the same dark jacket and knit cap, but now his gloves were on, and he held the flashlight low in one hand. In the other hand, a flat, black object. For one terrifying second, my brain screamed gun. But it was a handheld radio transmitter, the kind you de-use for a hobby drone or a ham setup, with a little antenna and dials. My lungs unlocked an inch. Not a gun, not a sudden execution. Still a threat. He looked up the stairwell into the hall, and he smiled faintly like this was awkward for him. "See," he said, "no reason to freak out. I'm not here to hurt the baby." Emily let out a broken sound behind me. I took a step forward without meaning to. "Then why are you here?" He shrugged slightly. "You unplugged the camera. That was annoying." "So you broke in," I said. "I didn't break anything," he corrected, almost offended by the accusation. "Your bulkhead latch is trash. The basement bulkhead. Outside. The old angled doors that led down to the basement steps. I checked it, but I hadn't. I hadn't checked it like someone trying to get in wood. I checked it like a homeowner, like a person who assumed the world was mostly decent." He continued, "Your monitor model, same one we've got, lets you do talk back if you know how. People don't realize. They think not Wi-Fi means safe. It's not. It's just old." My stomach churned. "So you were watching us." He lifted his shoulders again. "For 10 minutes, 15. I needed to know if you'd call the cops." Emily's breath came in short bursts. Mara made a little exhausted cough and then started crying again, weakly. He looked toward the sound, and his expression shifted, irritated, not sympathetic. "Can you keep her quiet?" he asked. That sentence did something to me. It turned my fear into a clean, hot line. "Get out," I said again, louder now. "Right now." He stared at me. The polite mask thinned. "I'm trying," he said, "but you're making this dramatic." He took one step up. The hall narrowed. The staircase funneled him toward us. I didn't move. He took another step. Now we were close enough that I could smell him, cold air, a hint of cigarettes, that sour metallic scent of someone who'd been sweating under synthetic fabric. "Ethan," Emily whispered urgently. "Kitchen, the back door." She was right. The back door was behind us. The yard, the fence, the garage. We could run. But the thought of turning my back on him made my skin crawl. And Mara, a baby in winter air. A baby in the dark. My mind stalled on the logistics, and that stall was exactly my flaw, hovering in the maybe, until the world decided for me. He climbed another step. His flashlight beam swung, hitting my face. My eyes watered instantly. I lifted the skillet, blocking the light, and in that movement my elbow knocked the knife block on the counter. Wood clacked. A knife handle shifted. The sound snapped something in him. His face tightened. "Don't," he said, and his voice was suddenly not calm. "Don't be stupid." He moved faster then, taking 2 steps at once. I didn't have time to think. I swung the skillet, a sideways arc, not aiming for his head because I wasn't trying to kill him. I was trying to make him stop moving toward my family. The skillet hit his forearm with a thick, dull thud. He grunted, pain sharp and involuntary, and the transmitter clattered down the stairs. The flashlight skittered, beam spinning wildly, making the hallway strobe. He grabbed the stair rail with his good hand and surged forward anyway. He was stronger than he looked. He caught my wrist, my skillet hand, and twisted hard. Pain snapped bright through my forearm. The skillet handle slipped in my sweaty grip. For a second we were locked there, his face inches from mine, teeth bared in effort. His breath smelled like stale coffee and nicotine. Behind me, Emily cried out, "Ethan," he shoved. I stumbled backward into the kitchen doorway, my hip slamming the counter edge. The impact made stars burst in my vision. The skillet dropped with a heavy clang onto the tile. He came up the last step, fully in the hall now. Inside our house, he glanced toward Emily, toward Mara, and something ugly flickered in his eyes, a calculation. He lunged, not at me this time, at them. Emily jerked back, turning her body to shield Mara. "Don't touch her," Emily screamed, and the sound was raw, not whispered anymore, not careful. The man's hand snatched at the sleep sack. Mara shrieked, thin and terrified. Something in me broke free of the hesitation like a snapped cable. I grabbed the first thing my hand found, the cast iron skillet on the floor. I drove it forward, not swinging, just pushing the heavy edge into his ribs with everything I had. He made a strangled sound and recoiled, stumbling sideways into the hall closet door. The closet door burst open, coats and scarves spilling like limbs. A hanger snapped. He lost his footing on the pile of fabric. He went down hard, shoulders slamming the hardwood. For half a second, everything went still. His eyes were wide. Mine were wide. Then he scrabbled for something, his flashlight, his transmitter, anything. Emily didn't wait. She ran. Not fast, not like in movies, but desperate, clumsy, careful not to drop Mara. She moved through the living room toward the front door, feet slipping slightly on the rug. "Go," I yelled, voice hoarse. "Go." I turned back to the man. He was already on one knee, cursing under his breath. His forearm was swelling where the skillet had hit it. He grimaced and flexed his fingers, then reached into his jacket pocket. My stomach lurched. This time was it a knife, a gun? He pulled out a small canister. Pepper spray. He raised it. I lunged. He sprayed. A hot, wet burn hit my face like a thrown handful of fire ants. My eyes slammed shut on reflex. My throat seized. I gagged. Tears poured instantly, uncontrolled. I heard Emily at the front door, fumbling with locks, Mara crying, her own breath sobbing out. The man's boots thudded on hardwood as he surged past me toward the front. Blind, I swung the skillet wildly and felt it catch something, his hip maybe, because he grunted and stumbled, but he didn't go down. I crashed into the wall, shoulder first, and the pain in my hip flared. I forced my eyes open a sliver. The living room was a smeared, watery blur. The porch outside was black. Emily had the deadbolt open. She yanked the door. Cold air slapped in, and then she froze. I followed her gaze through burning eyes. On the porch steps, half in shadow, stood another figure. A second man. Younger, late 20s maybe, hood up, hands in his pockets. He didn't rush. He didn't speak. He just stood there, blocking the exit like he'd been waiting for the exact moment we'd try to run. Emily's face collapsed into pure terror. "No," she whispered. Behind us, the first man laughed once, breathless, triumphant. "Told you," he said, and his voice was almost cheerful now. No need to make this dramatic. My brain did a fast, brutal inventory. Front blocked, back door behind the kitchen, basement behind the hallway. Phone, where was the phone? On the couch, maybe, or on the floor. Emily tried to slam the door. The second man's boot stopped it. Wood shuddered. Mara wailed. The first man grabbed Emily's arm. Emily screamed and twisted, and in the struggle, her foot caught the edge of the rug. She went down hard, hip hitting the floor. Mara stayed in her arms. Emily had the instinct to hold tight even as she fell, but the impact made Mara shriek like she'd been hurt. The sound tore through me. I charged. My eyes were still streaming, my face on fire, but I could see enough. I brought the skillet down on the first man's wrist as he held Emily. The blow landed with a sickening crack. He screamed, real scream now, and released her immediately, clutching his hand to his chest. Emily scrambled backward on the floor, clutching Mara, panting. The second man on the porch hesitated at the scream. His boot shifted. That hesitation was a door opening. I grabbed the throw blanket off the couch with my free hand and hurled it at the porch figure's face through the half-open door. It wasn't a weapon. It was a momentary blindness, a stupid, desperate trick. It worked. Flinched and pulled back, tearing the blanket off instinctively. I slammed the door with my shoulder. The latch caught, not the deadbolt. Emily hadn't had time, but the latch. I threw the chain lock over with shaking fingers and snapped it into place. The porch figure hit the door once with his palm hard. The chain jerked taut. Another hit. The doorframe groaned. Behind me, the first man was on his knees, moaning, cradling his broken wrist, his face twisted with rage. He looked up at me, eyes glassy with pain. "You don't get it," he hissed. "You don't get what you took." "I don't know you," I rasped, voice thick from pepper spray. "You live in my house," he said. He said it like a fact, like we were the intruders. The porch figure rattled the doorknob again. Emily, on the floor, fumbled blindly for her phone with one hand while holding Mara with the other. Her fingers found it under the couch cushion somehow, like muscle memory. She hit the screen. It lit her face. 911, she choked out. 911. I heard the dispatcher answer. Emily's voice was shredded, but she got the address out. "We need help," she said. "2 men, they're in the house. One is trying to get in the front door. Our baby, please." I turned back to the first man. He was crawling toward the hallway, toward the basement door, trying to retreat or trying to circle. My brain flashed to the nursery, to Mara's crib, to the camera angle turned toward the doorway. He hadn't needed to go up there now. He'd already been there once. The cost of that thought made my stomach twist. I stepped into his path, skillet raised. "Don't," I warned. He looked up at me, and for a second the polite neighbor mask returned absurdly. "This didn't have to be like this," he said, almost conversational again. "If you just listened." Behind me, the front door chain popped. Metal snapped. The door lurched inward a few inches. Cold air spilled in. The porch figure's shoulder jammed into the gap. Emily screamed again, still talking to 911, words tumbling. I had one choice. I could keep the first man from slipping toward the hall and risk the second getting through the front door. Or I could abandon the first and brace the door, risking him vanishing into the house. Either way, someone got past me. My hesitation returned, an old familiar vice. And then Mara made a small, broken sound, less a cry, more a struggling breath. Emily's face went white. She's choking, no, she's breathing, she's panic frothed in her voice. That decided it. I dropped the skillet. I lunged to the door, slamming my body against it, using my weight to hold it shut while the porch figure shoved. Wood flexed. The gap narrowed, then widened again as he pushed. My shoulders screamed with strain. Behind me, the first man surged toward the hallway. Emily shouted into the phone. He's moving, he's going to the back. I didn't have eyes on him anymore. I could only feel the door shuddering and hear the house betraying us with creaks and thumps. Then, suddenly, the porch figure stopped pushing. A new sound cut through the chaos. Sirens, close, fast. The porch figure cursed one sharp word and backed away from the door. The pressure eased. I nearly fell forward. Outside, red and blue light washed across the living room walls. The first man in the hallway froze mid-step. He looked toward the front, toward the flashing lights, and something like resignation crossed his face. Not fear, recognition. Like he'd played this out before. He turned and bolted toward the kitchen. I stumbled after him, adrenaline dragging my burning body forward. He hit the back door with his shoulder and yanked hard. The deadbolt held. He cursed, fumbled for the latch, then realized it was engaged. His eyes snapped to me, wild. I raised the skillet again had I picked it up. I didn't remember doing it, but it was in my hand like it belonged there. He made a choice then, not the back door, the basement. He spun, sprinting down the hall, grabbing the basement door handle and wrenching it open. He disappeared down the stairs, taking darkness with him. I took one step after him, and my foot caught the edge of the scattered coats from the closet. I went down hard, knee slamming wood, skull snapping back against the wall. Pain exploded white. For a moment, I couldn't breathe. Footsteps pounded outside. A voice shouted from the porch, "Police, come to the door." Emily was sobbing, still holding Mara, still on the phone. I lay on the floor, tasting blood and pepper spray, and the coppery panic of having been too slow by half a second. The conflict was ending, sirens, uniforms, commands, but the house was still ours to survive, because one of them was still in the basement, and we had no idea what he'd left behind on his way out. I came back in pieces. First, the siren washed through the blinds, turning the living room into a slow-motion police light show. Then, the smell, cold air, and pepper spray, and something metallic that might have been blood, might have been the old penny smell of fear. Then sound, boots on the porch, radios chirping, a man's voice saying, sir, look at me," like he was trying to catch my eyes in his hands and hold them still. My cheek was pressed against hardwood. It felt oddly warm under my face, like the house had its own body heat. "Ethan," Emily said. She was close. I heard her before I saw her. Her voice was shredded like sandpaper over a wire. "Ethan, please," I tried to answer and my throat seized. Pepper spray turned every breath into a cough. My eyes were swollen and leaking. My left ear rang. Somewhere in my mouth, I tasted blood. "Okay," an officer said. "We've got you. Don't move." Hands slid under my shoulders. Another hand steadied the back of my head, firm and careful. I tried to lift my chin, and the room spun like a lazy carnival ride. "Is my baby?" I croaked. "She's okay," Emily said immediately. "She's okay. I have her." The relief didn't feel like relief. It felt like a string cut inside my chest. A flashlight beam swept over the hallway toward the basement. Someone called, "Clear," from near the kitchen. Another voice answered, Hold," as if they were stacking up, like you see on TV, except this was my hallway, my coat spilling out of the closet like a body. "Where is he?" I tried again. "Basement," I heard myself say, though it sounded like it came from someone else. "He went down." "Copy," a radio chirped. Officer Grant's voice, calm, familiar, cut through the chaos. "Mr. Hale, I need you to stay with EMS. We're going to handle the basement." Grant crouched near me, face tight now in a way it hadn't been earlier. His eyes flicked to the scattered coats, the broken chain lock on the front door, the pepper spray haze hanging invisible in the air like a memory you couldn't see, but could still feel in your lungs. "You did the right thing calling," he said, and it wasn't comforting so much as it was a fact he needed me to accept. "I didn't," I started, meaning I didn't do enough. I didn't move fast enough. Grant didn't let me finish. "Focus on breathing." An EMT appeared, male, maybe 40, wearing gloves, and an expression that was both bored and kind. He held a small bottle of saline and a gauze pad. "Name?" he asked. "Ethan," I rasped. "Ethan, I'm going to flush your eyes," he said. "It's going to suck, but it helps." He wasn't wrong. The saline hit my eyes like icy needles, and I made a noise I didn't want to make in front of anyone. Tears poured harder. My throat spasmed with coughing. It felt like my face belonged to someone else. From behind the kitchen, a shout sharp and urgent, then a scuffle sound, boots hitting stairs. Emily's voice rose, panicked. "What's happening?" Grant's voice, louder now. "Stay back." I tried to sit up to see, but the EMT pressed me down gently. "Nope," he said. "You just took a hit to the head, buddy. Don't be a hero." That word felt wrong on me. The noise moved away, deeper into the basement. Shouts bounced up the stairwell, commands, quick instructions, then a loud metallic clang like someone had knocked into shelving. Then silence. A long, breath-held silence where every muscle in my body tightened, as if silence itself meant the worst. And then, "One in custody," someone yelled. The words didn't register cleanly at first. My brain wanted to keep the scene spinning, wanted to keep bracing. "One in custody," I repeated, and the EMT nodded like, yes, that's good. Let it land." Emily let out a sound that was half sob, half laugh, and then she sat down hard on the living room rug with Mara still in her arms. Her back hit the couch. She stared straight ahead, like she didn't trust her eyes to move. Mara, unbelievably, had gone quiet. Not asleep, just stunned. Her little face was red and wet. Her mouth trembled. She made tiny hiccupy breaths, watching Emily's face like she was learning what fear looked like. Officer Rinaldi walked up from the basement, cheeks flushed from exertion. "He was trying to get out through the bulkhead," she said to Grant. "We got him on the stairs. Wrists messed up." Grant nodded, jaw clenched. "And the other?" Rinaldi's eyes flicked to the front door. "Gone." The words slid through the room like cold air. "Gone." Grant looked at me, then at Emily, and he didn't sugarcoat it. "Second suspect took off when units arrived. We'll get K9 out, canvass the area, pull camera footage from neighbors if we can." Neighbors, cameras. The irony almost made me laugh. We avoided Wi-Fi cameras because we thought it made us safer. And now we were hoping someone else had recorded our street like a security blanket. Rinaldi's gaze dropped to the handheld transmitter, sitting on a plastic evidence tray near the hallway, black, angular, cheap-looking. "He had this," she said, "and a monitor in the basement. Same brand you described." Emily's face tightened. "So he was talking through ours." Grant nodded. "Yes." The confirmation didn't soothe anything. It just put a label on a thing that still felt unreal. An EMT moved to Emily. "Ma'am, can I check you and the baby?" Emily flinched, as if the question was an accusation. "She's fine," she said instantly. "Okay," the EMT replied, gentle. "I still need to check. Just quick." Emily's arms tightened around Mara, then loosened by force. She let the EMT touch Mara's little limbs, check her pupils with a tiny light, listen to her breathing. Mara hated it and started crying again, a tired, offended cry that almost felt normal. Emily's eyes tracked every movement, like if she watched hard enough, nothing bad could happen again. When it was my turn, they lifted my shirt and pressed cold fingers along my ribs. My hip was already blooming into a deep ache. My knee throbbed. The back of my head felt tender, like a bruise you could sense without touching. "You need to go in," the EMT said. "Head injury, pepper spray exposure. We'll take you to Newton Wellesley or Lahey, your call." "My wife," I said. Emily shook her head without looking at me. "Go," she whispered. "Go, I'm not leaving this house with her right now. I can't," her voice broke, not theatrically. Like a rope fraying, Grant stepped in. "Ma'am, we can have an officer stay with you." Emily nodded too quickly. Yes, the ambulance ride was a blur of fluorescent light and antiseptic smell, and the EMT's steady voice asking me to rate pain from 1 to 10. My mind kept replaying the moment the porch figure appeared hood up, quiet, blocking the exit like he'd been there the whole time. That still felt like the sharpest part, the cleanest betrayal of the idea that there was always an outside and an inside. At the hospital, everything moved on rails. Questions, forms, a CT scan, a doctor with tired eyes telling me I had a mild concussion, bruised hip, sprained wrist from where he twisted it. No skull fracture, no internal bleeding. I should feel grateful. I felt numb. They irrigated my eyes again. The sting eased, replaced by raw soreness. When I blinked, the world looked too bright, like it had been overexposed. A nurse asked if I felt safe going home. Home. I stared at her and didn't answer fast enough. She nodded like she understood. "We'll document it," she said, practical. "If you need a restraining order later, documentation helps." Restraining order against a man whose name I didn't know. Around 4:00 a.m., Emily called. Her voice was steadier now, but it had a new flatness, like she'd slid a piece of herself into a drawer and shut it. "They got him," she said. "I know," I whispered. "No," she said. "They got his name." I sat up too fast and regretted it immediately. My head pulsed. "What is it?" "Derek Marlowe," she said. 43. Lives, her breath hitched. "He lives in the blue cape with the basketball hoop. 2 houses down." He hadn't lied. Not about that. My stomach turned. "They found his wife," Emily continued. "She didn't know. She said he told her the monitor was broken. She was shaking. She kept saying he wouldn't. "Why us?" I asked, and hated how small my voice sounded. Emily was quiet. In the background, I could hear Mara's white noise. Emily must have turned it on with her phone, since we'd unplugged the machine. The sound was slightly different, a digital version of the ocean. Wrong, but close enough. "Grant said," Emily swallowed. "Grant said Derek had eviction papers in his jacket pocket. Old ones for this address." I closed my eyes and saw the man's face, the way he'd said, "You live in my house." Not metaphorical, not a threat, a belief. "He used to rent here," Emily said. "Before we bought it, like years ago. He got evicted. Non-payment, maybe, or I don't know. He told himself it was stolen from him." "And the other guy?" I asked. "Grant thinks it was his cousin," she said, "or a friend. They've got a partial plate from a neighbor's ring camera." "Ring camera, of course." "They'll find him," she added quickly, like she needed me to believe that. I wanted to believe it. "Are you okay?" she asked, and there was a tremor under the flatness. "No," I said honestly. "But I'm here," she exhaled. "Mara's okay. She's clingy. She won't settle unless she's on me, which is fine. I'm not putting her down anyway." There was a pause where neither of us said the thing we were both thinking. We can't live like this. I'm coming home, I said. You can't drive, she said, immediate. Then I'll Uber, I said. Emily's laugh was a single, dry puff. Great. A stranger car. Love that. The truth of it made both of us quiet again. When I got back just after sunrise, the street looked normal in that cruel way mornings do. Snow still on lawns. Someone's porch light still on because they forgot to turn it off. A guy scraping his windshield like it was any other day. Our front door had splintered around the chain lock. An officer stood in our living room, sipping coffee from a paper cup, looking like he'd spent a long night in a house that didn't belong to him. Emily was on the couch, Mara asleep on her chest. Emily's hair was still up, but now it looked like it hurt. Her face had that drained, washed-out color people get after adrenaline leaves. She looked up when I came in. For a second, we just stared at each other, trying to match the person we saw to the person we remembered from yesterday. Then she stood carefully, shifting Mara without waking her, and walked to me. She pressed her forehead to my shoulder. I put my arms around her and felt how tense she still was, like a wire. I'm sorry, I whispered, not for the thing I did, but for the seconds I lost to indecision, for the way I'd asked questions instead of moving, for the fact that my body had to be forced into action by the sound of my baby's panic. Emily didn't answer that. She didn't absolve me. She just held on. Officer Grant approached quietly. His eyes looked older than they had hours ago. Mr. Hale, he said, I'm glad you're back. Here's what we have so far. He spoke in the careful cadence of someone who knew every word had weight now. Marlowe is in custody. He's being charged with breaking and entering, assault, attempted kidnapping. Emily's grip tightened on me. Grant paused, softening his voice. And some additional counts related to unlawful electronic transmission. He invoked his right to counsel. We'll get you a victim advocate. There will be court dates. Attempted kidnapping, Emily whispered, like she needed to hear the words fully formed to accept them. Grant nodded once. Based on his actions and statements, we're treating it seriously. And the second man, I asked. We're working leads, he said. We're not stopping. He handed me a card with a name and number. Victim Services, he said. They'll help with protective orders, relocation resources if you choose. Relocation. The word sat on the coffee table like a heavy object. After the police finally left, and the house settled into a false quiet, Emily and I walked through each room like we were inspecting it for hidden cracks. In the kitchen, the back door still held its deadbolt, still looked normal, which made me angry. I wanted obvious damage. I wanted the world to look as violated as it felt. In the hallway, the closet door hung crooked on its hinges, coats still piled on the floor where they'd fallen like a tangle of bodies. I picked them up slowly, one by one. Emily watched me like she was afraid I'd find something else. The basement door was closed now, locked. But when I stood at the top of the stairs and looked down into the dim, unfinished space, I felt the same rush of dread as before. The furnace sat there like a sleeping animal. Shelves lined with old paint cans and Christmas decorations looked suddenly like hiding spots. Grant had told us they'd searched it thoroughly. He de-said it twice. Still, my skin didn't believe him. Emily took Mara upstairs for a nap. I replaced the broken front door chain with a temporary latch from the hardware store, metal that bit cleanly, no sentimental squeak. Then, almost automatically, I went to the living room coffee table, where the baby monitor had been. The monitor was gone. evidence. The absence felt like a missing tooth. I kept reaching for it with my eyes, expecting to see the small screen, the steady green LED. Instead, there was just a pale rectangle of dust where it had sat. Emily came down later with Mara in her arms and stopped when she saw me staring at the empty spot. "We're not getting another one," she said. "We need something," I said, and heard my own voice tighten. We can," she said flatly. "We can put her in our room. We can take turns. We can hear her. I don't care. No cameras. No speakers. Nothing that lets anyone reach in." I wanted to argue. I wanted to say there were safe ones, encrypted ones, modern ones. But the word safe had lost its meaning. "Okay," I said. "Okay." That night, the nursery stayed empty. Mara's crib remained upstairs like a museum exhibit. We moved the bassinet back into our bedroom, even though she'd outgrown it, and her legs brushed the bottom. Emily slept sitting up for the first 2 hours because she couldn't let her body go fully horizontal. Every time Mara shifted, Emily's eyes flew open. I lay beside them, eyes open too, listening to the house. The radiator ticked. The refrigerator clicked. A car passed outside, tires hissing on wet pavement, almost normal. But my mind kept mapping the layout in the dark. Front door, hallway, kitchen, basement door. How fast someone could move from one to the other. How much sound the old floors made. Around 2:14 a.m., my phone buzzed on the nightstand. I stared at it, heart already climbing. Unknown number. Emily's head lifted instantly. She hadn't even been asleep. I didn't answer. I watched the screen until it stopped buzzing. No voicemail. Then, a second later, a text appeared, no name, no context. Just 2 words, "Dad, listening." Emily made a small sound that wasn't quite a sob and wasn't quite a laugh. I turned my phone face down so the light wouldn't wake Mara, but the words kept glowing behind my eyelids anyway. Maybe it was the other guy. Maybe it was some cruel copycat who'd seen police lights and guessed. Maybe it was nothing. A wrong number. A prank. But the phrase used the exact cadence of the monitor. And in the dark, in the almost ordinary quiet, maybe didn't feel neutral anymore. It felt like a door that could open at any time. And that's the end of today's chilling tale. If you enjoyed this story and want more nights full of suspense, don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe to Mia Horror Stories, and turn on the bell so you never miss a scare. I've got plenty more stories waiting for you, so stick around and check out the other videos on the channel. Thanks for watching, and until next time, stay safe and don't look behind you. Welcome to Mia Horror Stories. To make it easier on your eyes, this video plays against a black screen, so you can close your eyes, get comfortable, and let the story take over. But don't relax too much, the ending might just catch you off guard. Stay with me until the very last word. At first, it was just the stoplight. It hung over Main Street, doing what it always did, red, green, red, except it was green for too long. Long enough that I noticed it in the lazy way you notice a song looping on a neighbor's porch speaker. Long enough that my foot hovered over the brake out of habit, not need, while the empty cross street sat there like a staged photo. No headlights, no late-night delivery vans, no drifting silhouettes of kids sneaking cigarettes behind the grocery. Green, green, green. I told myself the sensor was stuck, that the town had finally saved money on LEDs and bought something cheap that glitched when the temperature dropped. It was February, and the air had that metallic cold that makes your nose feel sharp. You could explain anything with weather. I rolled through. The streets were wet from an earlier mist, not enough to puddle, just enough to make the asphalt shine under the lamps. The tires made a soft hiss. My heater blew lukewarm air that smelled faintly like dust and old plastic. The dash clock read 2:58 in the corner, the kind of digital font that looks too confident for how often it lies. My phone buzzed in the cup holder and lit the inside of the car in a pale rectangle. "Maya, you close." I thumbed back with my right hand, steering with my left, watching the lane lines glide under my headlights. "Emmy, 2 min you still outside?" No reply yet. The signal bars on my phone were there, full, which was a comfort I didn't realize I needed, until the thought of them dropping occurred to me, like remembering the existence of ice after you've already stepped onto it. I turned onto Pine and cut past the hardware store. The sign, HARRIS and Sons, was dark, but the reflective paint caught my beams and flared white for a second, then went dull again. A stray shopping cart was half on the curb like a drunk that had fallen mid-step. There was nothing unusual about that either, and still, everything felt held, as if the whole town had exhaled and decided to wait. My car passed the diner, and the smell of old grease and coffee grounds, impossible, because the place had been closed for hours, still clung to the brick like it always did. A sodium street lamp flickered and made the sidewalk pulse. It didn't go out. It just hesitated, like a person forgetting a word. By the time I pulled into the small lot behind the clinic, the clock on my dash said 2:59. My wipers squeaked once when I turned them off, a single rubber complaint. The building was a 2-story rectangle that had tried to look welcoming by painting itself a pale yellow. It failed. In winter, it looked like someone had left a stick of butter on the counter too long. 2 of the upstairs windows glowed. One was the staff room. One was the triage bay, and the glow spilled down the brick in soft squares. Maya was outside like she'd asked me to be, hood up, hair stuffed into it, both hands wrapped around a paper cup. She stood under the overhang near the back door, where the security camera pointed. The camera had a little red LED on its underside that blinked in slow, satisfied intervals. She lifted her cup in a tired salute as I got out. "Finally," she said. Her voice was flat, but her mouth tried for a smile. Her breath came out in white threads. Maya Patel, 29, female, ER nurse, 2 years out of Chicago, 1 year into this town because her mom had decided her lungs would behave better here. Maya always moved like her muscles were running on a schedule. Even standing still, she looked like she was mentally counting down to her next task. "Traffic," I said, and she snorted because we both knew that was a lie. There was no traffic at this hour. There wasn't even the usual one car that always seemed to be out doing something suspiciously aimless. "Yeah, sure," she nodded at my car. "You bring the jumper cables." I popped the trunk and dug them out from under my spare tire. They were heavy in my hands, cold enough that the plastic handles made my fingers ache through my gloves. "You're leaving your car here?" I asked. "Just for a bit," she said. "Battery's dead. I was gonna call my dad, but it's..." She glanced at the sky as if it might tell her the time. "It's late." That was the truth, but not the reason. Maya hated asking for help in ways that made her feel like a problem someone else had to solve. Her private fear, she'd admitted it once on a bad shift, leaning against a vending machine, was that she took up too much space in people's lives. She compensated by making herself useful until it hurt. I didn't push. "Okay, where's your car?" "Front lot," she said and pointed. I didn't want to go around there alone. She said it lightly, like she was joking, but she was. The clinic didn't have security at night unless there was a violent patient, and tonight it had been quiet in the way quiet can make you more aware of your own footsteps. We walked around the building. The back lot had a thin glaze of ice near the drain. Our shoes made small, careful sounds. Somewhere, a dog barked once, and then stopped as abruptly as if someone had turned off a speaker. "What happened?" I asked, because I'd only gotten the texts. "You said you heard something," Maya shrugged, pulling her hood tighter. "I don't know. I was taking out the trash and I thought I heard like a bunch of people in the parking lot, talking, laughing. But when I looked, there was nobody. That's it. She lifted her cup and sipped. And then my car wouldn't start, and I decided I didn't want to spend the rest of my life in this building. "Fair," I said. "My name is Luke Mercer, 33, male. I live 2 streets from the clinic, in a rental that smells like someone else's laundry detergent. I teach high school English because I thought it would make me a person with clean edges and a useful purpose. It didn't. It made me good at pretending I wasn't tired. I also hadn't slept right in months. That's not a dramatic statement. It's a physical one. I would wake up at 2:47 or 3:12 with my heart doing something impatient, like it was late for an appointment. And then I'd lie there staring at the ceiling until morning. My private flaw, my own quiet, embarrassing one, was that I didn't trust calm. If things were peaceful, I waited for the moment they were. I'd lived long enough with a father who could turn any small mistake into a week-long storm that my body still prepared for impact, even when the sky was clear. We reached the front lot. It was bigger, more open, bordered by a line of bare trees and a low hedge that had gone brown. The clinic's sign out front, RIVERBND Urgent Care, glowed blue-white. In the distance, Main Street's lights were visible between buildings like a string of small moons. Maya's car sat under a lamp, a compact sedan with a thin layer of grit on the bumper. The interior light turned on when she opened the door, then dimmed. "Okay," she said, setting her cup on the roof. "Let's do this before I change my mind." We clipped the cables onto my battery and then onto hers. The metal made a little spark when the final clamp touched, a brief snap that made us both flinch and then laugh at ourselves. "Ready?" I asked. "Yeah." She slid into her seat, door open, one leg out. "If it doesn't start, I'm going to set it on fire and walk to the river." Noted. I started my car and let it run. The headlights of mine and the overhead lamp together created overlapping shadows that made the lot look layered, like there were 2 versions of it slightly misaligned. Maya turned her key. The engine clicked. Once, twice. Then it caught with a reluctant, uneven rumble that steadied after a second. "Yes," she said, and exhaled as if she'd been holding her breath for longer than just the jump. "Okay, thank you." "Anytime," I said, unhooking the cables. My fingers were clumsy from cold. Maya got out, leaving her engine on, and leaned against her door. "You want to come inside for a minute? I can get you a coffee. It tastes like sadness, but it's warm." "I shouldn't," I said automatically, because my brain liked routines and limits. Then my phone buzzed again, and for a second the sound felt too loud. No message came through. The screen lit and stayed on the lock screen, just lit, like it was thinking. Maya noticed. "You okay?" "Yeah." I tapped the screen. Nothing changed. The time on my phone read 3:00. My dash clock in my car visible through the windshield, also read 300. It had been 2:59 a second ago. I was sure it had, but time moves. That's what it does. So this was normal. Still, my eyes flicked to the clinic sign. Its digital display had a small scrolling line on the bottom that usually showed HOURS and a phone number. The scrolling line was frozen mid-word. The dot matrix letters halted like someone had paused a video. The main sign still glowed steadily. It hadn't lost power. The little LED camera light under the overhang back where we'd started had stopped blinking. Just on, solid red. Maya followed my gaze. Maybe it's a timer thing, I said, and the fact that I was narrating excuses out loud made me feel stupid. Maya pushed off her door and took 2 steps toward the building, squinting. That's weird. From inside, through the glass doors, the reception area was visible. There was a wall clock behind the desk, the kind with a second hand that ticks loudly when you're waiting for someone to call your name. The second hand wasn't moving. Maya stared at it, then at me. "Luke, what?" I asked, already feeling that old animal part of my brain leaning forward. "Do you see that?" "Yeah," I said, and my mouth went dry. "Maybe the battery's dead." "In the clinic wall clock," she said, "at the exact same moment as the sign and your phone being weird." "It's not being weird," I said too quickly. "It's just," I looked down at my phone again and tried to unlock it. The swipe animation stuttered. Not fully froze, but like it was wading through thick water. My notification bar showed the signal bars, Wi-Fi icon, battery, everything normal. Yet the screen lagged under my thumb in a way it never had. Maya lifted her own phone. "Mine's not unlocking," she said, and there was something small and sharp in her voice now, like a crack in glass. We stood there, 2 adults in a parking lot, staring at our devices like they were supposed to tell us how to behave. Somewhere in the dark beyond the hedge, a car engine ran, a steady idle. We both turned our heads. At the edge of the lot, on the street that led back to Maine, there was a pickup truck stopped at the intersection. Headlights on, turn signal blinking. Blink, blink, blink. But it wasn't moving through the green light. It just sat there, as if the driver was waiting for something. Maya's shoulders tensed. "Is he okay?" "Maybe he fell asleep," I said. It sounded thin. "Who falls asleep at a light with their blinker on? It happens. It can happen. People do dumb things. Except the blinker kept blinking at a perfectly steady rhythm. The same rhythm, I realized, as the camera LED had been blinking before it stopped. A slow, patient pulse, like an electronic heartbeat. Maya started walking toward the truck, not fast, but purposeful. That was her. If someone might be hurt, she went toward it before her fear could negotiate terms. "Maya," I said, and the urgency surprised me. "Wait," she paused, looked back. "He could be having a stroke," or she gestured helplessly. "He's just sitting there." I glanced toward Main Street. From here, we could see part of it, the diner corner, the light over the pharmacy, the tall sign of the gas station farther down. Everything looked the same as it always did. And yet, now that I was looking, I saw things that didn't fit. A person standing on the sidewalk across from the diner, under the awning, one hand lifted as if mid-wave. A bicycle tipped slightly, rider frozen in that moment, right before they put their foot down. A dog at the curb, leash slack, head angled. They were too far away to see faces, but the shapes were wrong in a way my brain didn't want to name. Not wrong like monsters. Wrong like a paused frame in a normal movie. Maya whispered, "Luke, what is that?" I swallowed. My throat made a small click. I wanted to say it was a trick of distance, a coincidence, a weird municipal power hiccup, a cell tower issue, carbon monoxide in the air making us hallucinate together. The list of explainable things piled up, and none of them felt heavy enough. The pickup's headlights stared at us, unblinking. The turn signal kept its unwavering cadence. Blink, blink, blink. Maya took one more step. Her hand went to the pocket of her jacket where her clinic badge usually hung, as if it could protect her. "I'm just going to check on him," she said, quieter now, to convince herself. My own feet didn't move. My body had that familiar sensation of standing at the edge of a pool, toes curled, waiting for the shock of cold water. My flaw, my distrust of calm, had turned itself inside out. Now, the calm was too complete, too absolute, and I didn't know what a storm looked like when it came from this. From inside the clinic, somewhere deeper than the reception, a noise started. Not a scream, not a bang, a printer. That steady, mechanical whir and click of paper feeding through rollers. The sound drifted down the hallway and into the lobby like the building had decided to keep doing one small task despite everything else. Maya looked at the doors. "We have a printer on a timer," she said slowly. "Lab results, sometimes. It prints automatically." "At 3, I said, and it came out like a question. Her eyes met mine. The light above us buzzed faintly, a thin electric insect sound. The pickup's blinker kept blinking. The figures on Main Street remained in their strange, motionless positions. We were standing in the only place that still seemed to have choices. Maya's voice was careful. "Okay," she said. "2 options." She held up 2 fingers like she was teaching a patient how to breathe through pain. "1, we go to that truck and see if someone's hurt. 2, I asked, even though I already knew. 2, we go inside," she said, "and see what the hell is printing at 3 in the morning." I glanced again toward Main Street, toward the person mid-wave, toward the bicycle that didn't wobble, toward the dog that didn't shift its weight. Then I looked at the clinic doors, the still second hand behind the desk, the frozen scrolling sign outside, the solid red camera light. The air smelled like cold metal and the faint sweetness of Maya's coffee. Somewhere, my car engine hummed steadily, a small normal sound in a landscape that suddenly felt staged. Maya waited, fingers still up, breath turning to fog. "Which one?" she asked. And I realized that whichever direction we chose, we'd be stepping into whatever this was, instead of standing outside it pretending it was nothing. Maya didn't wait for my answer. She lowered her 2 fingers, turned, and started toward the pickup. "Truck first," she said over her shoulder. "If someone's having a stroke, we don't get to ignore that." Of course she would choose that. Of course I would follow. The pavement between the clinic lot and the street felt longer than it had any right to. Our shoes made hollow sounds in the cold. My car idled behind us, a low, steady purr that suddenly felt fragile, like it could quit at any second and leave us in whatever this was. The pickup's blinker kept its metronome rhythm. Blink, blink, blink. As we got closer, I could see it was an older Ford, dull blue, with a ladder rack bolted to the bed. The driver's side window was rolled halfway down. The interior light wasn't on. Headlights washed the intersection in pale white. The traffic light above the truck was green. It stayed green. Maya reached the driver's door and knocked on the metal with her knuckles. "Sir," she called. "Are you okay?" No response. She leaned down, peering in. I hovered at her shoulder, my pulse tapping behind my ears. The driver was a man in his 50s, maybe, wearing a high-visibility jacket with reflective stripes. His hands were on the steering wheel at 10 and 2. His head was angled slightly toward the windshield. Eyes open, not wide, not panicked, just open. "Sir," Maya tried again, louder now. She waved her hand in front of his face through the open window. Nothing. His chest, I squinted, trying to see if it moved. The windshield reflected the traffic light, making it hard to tell. "Is he breathing?" I whispered. "I can't tell." Her voice had lost its casual edge. It was clipped, professional. "Sir, can you hear me?" She reached in and touched his shoulder. I braced for a reaction, a flinch, a start, a shout. He didn't even sway. Her fingers pressed into the fabric of his jacket. She shook him gently. "Sir," he felt solid, not rigid like a statue, just like a person sitting very still. Maya glanced at me. "Call 911. I pulled my phone out. The screen was still on 300. It hadn't advanced. The swipe to unlock lagged, stuttered. The keypad came up after a delay that felt like it belonged to a dial-up modem. I hit 911. The call icon pulsed. No ring, no busy signal, just the word calling sitting there as if it had been typed and forgotten. "It's not connecting," I said. Maya swore under her breath and reached across the driver, fumbling for the hazard lights. The truck's blinkers started flashing in sync now, both sides, a brighter, more urgent pulse. Blink, 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 blink. The driver's own turn signal stopped. For a second, that felt like progress, like something had changed. "Sir," she said again, closer to his ear. "If you can hear me, blink." His eyes didn't move. I looked up at the intersection. The cross street's light was red. It stayed red. No cars moved on either side. No engines revved. No horns complained. And then I noticed something worse. The gas station sign down Main, visible over the roof of the pickup, had its digital price numbers lit. $3.19. $3.49. They glowed steady and bright. But the small digital clock embedded at the bottom of the sign also read 300. I checked my phone again. 300. I looked at the dashboard clock in the pickup, visible through the windshield. 300. "Time S not moving," I said, and I hated how it sounded, like I was narrating a bad dream. Maya didn't answer. She had 2 fingers pressed to the man's neck now, searching for a carotid pulse. Her brow furrowed. "What?" I asked. "I can't feel anything," she said, too calm. Either I'm missing it, or she shifted her fingers, tried again. "I don't," she swallowed. "I don't feel a pulse." My stomach flipped. "But he's upright," I said. "He's not slumped, his eyes are open." "I know." She moved quickly then, reaching across him to pop the door open wider. The hinges creaked. The dome light flickered on overhead, a dull yellow glow that made his skin look waxy. "Help me get him out," she said. "Maya, if he's in cardiac arrest, we have minutes," she snapped. "Or we would, if time was actually moving." That last part slipped out of her like a thought she hadn't meant to say. We unbuckled his seatbelt. The click of the latch was loud in the quiet street. When we pulled him forward, his body came easily, not stiff, not resisting. Just limp in a controlled way, like someone asleep who had decided not to wake. We eased him down onto the cold pavement. His eyelids didn't flutter. His jaw stayed slack. His skin felt cool under my fingers, but not icy. Maya tilted his head back, checked his airway, leaned down close to his mouth. "I don't feel breath." "Start compressions," I said automatically, because that's what you say when you don't know what else to say. She placed her hands on his chest and began. 1, 2, 3, 4, her palms pressed down. His jacket crinkled. The sound of fabric and bone under pressure echoed faintly off the empty storefronts. I found myself counting with her. 8, 9, 10. Nothing changed. His eyes stayed open. His face didn't contort. There was no gasp, no cough. "Come on," she muttered under her breath, like she was coaxing a stubborn machine. "Come on." She went through 30 compressions, then pinched his nose and gave 2 breaths. His chest rose under her mouth. No response. "Again," she said. We were kneeling in the middle of an intersection, performing CPR on a man whose entire world seemed paused around him. I glanced toward Main Street. The person under the diner awning was still mid-wave. Closer now, I could see it was a woman, maybe mid-30s, holding a phone in her raised hand, as if she'd just spotted someone across the street. Her coat flared slightly, caught in a breeze that apparently no longer existed. The bicycle rider was balanced at an impossible angle, 1 foot hovering inches above the ground. The dog at the curb had its ears perked, leash taut in a line that led to a man frozen mid-step. They weren't moving. They weren't falling. They weren't even swaying. "Maya," I said, my voice cracking. "It's not just him." She didn't look up. Focus. Her arms were already shaking slightly from the compressions. 15, 16. "I can't feel anything," she said again, frustration edging into her tone. "No pulse, no spontaneous breathing. But he's not gray. He's not mottled. He looks normal," I said. "Exactly." She stopped after another cycle and sat back on her heels, breath fogging in short bursts. "Okay." "Okay what?" I asked. "We need a defibrillator. The clinic." "Yes." We both looked toward Riverbend Urgent Care. It was less than 100 yards away. The glass doors reflected the streetlights in long streaks. Through them, the reception area sat unchanged. The printer noise was still going, a steady mechanical whir. The pickup's hazard lights blinked over the man's body. Blink, 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 blink. "If we move him," I said, "we're taking him away from whatever this is." She shot me a look. "You think leaving him in the road is safer?" "I don't know what's safer," I admitted. That was the truth I hated most. Maya stood, wiping her hands on her jeans, leaving faint streaks of dirt. "Help me." We lifted him under the arms and legs. His body was heavier than I expected, dead weight without being dead. His head lolled slightly, but didn't fully slump. As we dragged him toward the clinic, something else shifted in the corner of my eye. The traffic light above us flickered, not from green to yellow, just a flicker like a blink. For the briefest second, it went dark. Then it came back on green, and I swear I felt something move in the air, not wind, not sound, just a correction. We got him to the clinic doors. They didn't open automatically when we stepped in front of them. "Great," Maya said. She tried the handle, locked. "Of course they're locked," I muttered. "It's 3 in the morning." "My badge," she said, already fishing it out of her pocket. She swiped it against the reader beside the door. Nothing. She swiped again. The small screen on the reader was frozen mid-animation, a progress circle stuck at half. "Maya," I said, panic creeping in now. "What if it's not just outside? What if it's inside too?" She didn't answer. She banged on the glass with her fist. "Hello? Anyone inside?" Through the glass, the receptionist, Carla, 46, female, sat behind the desk. She was leaning forward slightly, one hand on the keyboard, mouth parted as if mid-sentence. She didn't move. "Carla," Maya shouted. No reaction. I moved closer to the glass, pressing my face near it. Carla's eyes were open, focused on something beyond the monitor. A coffee mug sat near her elbow. Steam was rising from it. That's what made my stomach twist. The steam was rising in a thin, elegant curl, but it wasn't changing shape. It was like someone had drawn it and left it there. "Maya," I said, my voice low. "The steam." She saw it too, her lips parted. "That's not possible," she whispered. The printer inside the clinic finished its current page with a final mechanical chirp. A sheet of paper slid out and landed in the tray. It didn't fall. It hung, half in, half out of the printer, frozen mid-drop. My brain felt like it was trying to chew through something too large. Maya stepped back from the door slowly. "Okay," she said, and her voice had gone tight in a way I'd only heard once before, when a kid in the ER had coded and they couldn't get him back. "Okay, new plan." "What plan?" "We don't bring him inside." "Then what?" She looked down at the man between us. "We check someone else." "That's your plan," I said, incredulous. "Just test it." "Yes," she said sharply. "Because if it's everyone, then we're not dealing with one cardiac arrest. We're dealing with something systemic." The word hung there. "Systemic. Carbon monoxide," I offered weakly. "Outside," she shot back. "Across an entire town." I didn't have an answer. We dragged the man back toward the sidewalk, laying him gently on the concrete near the hedge. "Stay here," Maya said. "Absolutely not." She hesitated, then nodded once. "Fine, but if something feels wrong, we leave. Immediately." That last word was for me, I knew, for my tendency to freeze when things got too quiet. We walked toward Main Street. The closer we got, the clearer the tableau became. The woman under the awning, Sophie Delgado, 34, female, a barista at the diner, had her phone held up at an angle, mouth open mid-laugh. A silver ring gleamed on her left hand. "Hey," Maya said softly, stepping into her line of sight. "Sophie," no blink. Maya touched her arm. "Nothing." I circled the bicyclist, teenage boy, maybe 16, male, helmet half-strapped. His foot hovered inches above the pavement. I nudged the wheel with my hand. The wheel didn't roll. It didn't resist. It just stayed, like it was fixed in place. "What is happening?" I whispered. The dog at the curb, golden retriever, tongue half out, had a thin strand of drool suspended from its mouth to the air below. The strand didn't fall. I reached out and swiped my finger through it. It broke. The drool fell and hit the pavement. The dog didn't react. Maya saw that. "You changed something," she said. The broken strand glistened on the ground. For the first time since 300, something had moved that wasn't us. And then, in the distance, beyond the gas station, I heard it. A low, rising whine, an engine revving, not idling, accelerating. Maya and I turned at the same time. Down Main Street, past the frozen figures and silent storefronts, a pair of headlights lurched into view from a side road. The car wasn't slowing. It was coming straight through the red light at the far intersection, and every person in its path was standing perfectly still. The car didn't slow down. It blew through the far intersection like the red light meant nothing, like the empty street was a racetrack. Headlights jittered over storefront windows and frozen faces. The engine had that strained, high whine of someone pushing the accelerator too hard in a low gear. "Maya," I said, already moving. Sophie Delgado stood directly in its path. The geography snapped into focus in my head in a way it never had before. Main Street ran north-south. The clinic sat 1 block west on Pine. The gas station was 2 blocks south. The diner was halfway between. The car was coming from the East Side Road, cutting west across Maine. It would hit Sophie first, then the bicyclist, then plow straight into the gas station pumps. "Move her," Maya said. We lunged for Sophie at the same time. Her arm was stiff in my hands, but not rigid, just suspended. When I pulled, she came easily, like someone stepping out of a photograph. Her raised phone tipped and fell from her frozen grip. It hit the sidewalk and clattered an ordinary human sound that felt enormous. The car roared closer. We dragged Sophie back toward the diner wall. My shoes slipped on damp concrete. My shoulders slammed into the brick awning support, and pain flared down my arm. "Bicycle," Maya said, already pivoting. The teenage boy was still balanced, one foot hovering. I grabbed the handlebars and yanked. For a split second, the bike resisted, not physically, but in a way that felt like pushing against thick air. Then it gave, tipping sideways. The boy's body folded in a loose, normal way as we hauled him to the curb. The dog at the crosswalk stood exactly where the car would pass. "Leave it," I said, because there wasn't time. The car tore through the intersection. The dog's leash snapped taut as the vehicle clipped it. The golden retriever's body was yanked sideways and tumbled under the front bumper. The impact sound was dull, wrongly soft. The car swerved hard, overcorrected, and plowed straight into the gas station's nearest pump. Metal shrieked, glass burst, the pump buckled. For half a second, nothing happened. Then gasoline sprayed out in a bright arc, misting the air. The engine kept revving. "Kill it," Maya breathed. The driver door flung open. A man stumbled out, mid-30s male, wearing a gray hoodie and pajama pants. He looked wild-eyed, sweaty, panting like he'd run a mile. He looked alive. "What the hell is happening?" he shouted. His voice cracked the night open. Maya and I stared at him like he was a miracle. "You can move," I said stupidly. "Obviously I can move," he snapped. "Why isn't anyone else?" He turned and saw the frozen figures lining Maine. The gas pump behind him continued to spew fuel, splashing onto asphalt, pooling around the car's front tires. "Engine," Maya said, snapping back into herself. "Turn it off." The man dove back inside, fumbled with the ignition. The engine died. The gasoline kept flowing. I could hear it, liquid hitting concrete, a constant splash. "Emergency shutoff," I said. "There's a button." Every gas station had one, usually on the side of the building near the entrance. We sprinted toward the convenience store attached to the pumps. The glass doors were locked. Inside, the clerk, middle-aged woman, mid-blink, stood behind the counter. A bag of chips hovered halfway between her hand and the scanner. "Where is it?" the man yelled. "Outside wall," I said, scanning there. "Red metal box. Emergency stop." I slammed my palm against it. Nothing. I hit it again. Still nothing. "It's dead," I said. "No," Maya said, already circling the pump. The lines ruptured. The pump's digital display was frozen at 300 as well. The gasoline spraying wasn't changing shape the way the steam in the clinic hadn't changed. It was flowing normally, moving. I watched the liquid spread toward the gutter, toward the storm drain. "Why is that moving?" I asked. The pajama man shook his head wildly. I don't know. He ran a hand through his hair. "I was at home. I woke up and everything was wrong. My wife," his voice cracked. "She was standing in the hallway, just standing." Maya's jaw tightened. "Name," she said. "Ethan," he said. "Ethan Ward, 36. "Okay, Ethan," she said, voice steady but fast. Right now, we have fuel on the ground and a hot engine. It's off, he protested. The manifold's still hot, she snapped. And if any spark hits, as if summoned by her words, a faint ticking sound came from the crumpled hood of the car. Metal cooling, expanding, contracting. Each tick sounded like a match being struck. We backed away instinctively. Fire extinguisher, I said. Inside, locked. The clerk inside didn't move. Ethan slammed his fist against the glass. It thudded uselessly. A faint hissing noise rose from somewhere near the base of the pump. I felt something brush my ankle. I jumped back with a choked sound. It was just the broken leash from the dog, dragged across the pavement by the spreading fuel. I swallowed, embarrassed at the spike of fear. Gasoline smell thickened, sharp and chemical. It burned the back of my throat. We need sand, Maya said, or something to absorb it. Where? I demanded. Construction site, I said suddenly. 2 blocks north. They're redoing the sidewalk by the bank. There's gravel. The geography clicked again. Bank on the north corner, temporary fencing, piles of dirt and crushed stone. Go, Maya said. You're staying, I asked. I'm not leaving this, she said, gesturing at the pump. Ethan looked between us like a trapped animal. I'll go, he said. No, I said. You hit the pump, you're staying. He stared at me, breathing hard. Fine, he spat. I ran. My lungs burned in the cold air. My shoes slapped pavement. Every frozen person I passed felt like a landmark in a nightmare. The dog's body lay twisted near the curb, unmoving. At the construction site, the temporary fencing stood open. A mound of gravel sat under a tarp. I grabbed a plastic bucket lying nearby and started shoveling with my hands. The stones bit into my skin. My fingers went numb. Halfway back, I heard a sound that made my stomach drop. A scream, high, thin, cutting through everything. I dropped the bucket. Maya shouted, sprinting. The scream cut off abruptly. I rounded the corner onto Main, heart pounding so hard it made my vision pulse. Maya stood near the pump, clutching her shoulder. Ethan was on the ground, holding his face. The scream hadn't been terror. It had been Ethan when gasoline splashed into his eyes. I can't see, he yelled. I can't see. Water, Maya said through gritted teeth. We need water. The station, locked. The pump's hissing had slowed slightly, but fuel still pooled around their shoes. I grabbed Ethan under the arms and dragged him away from the slick. He thrashed blindly, hands clawing at his face. It burns, he sobbed. Maya pointed. Fire hydrant. There was one half a block south, painted dull yellow. I hauled Ethan down the sidewalk. Maya followed, favoring her left arm. What happened? I demanded. Metal snapped, she said tightly. The pump casing caught me. Blood soaked through her sleeve near the shoulder. At the hydrant, I spun the cap uselessly with my bare hands. Tool, Maya gasped. There was a small maintenance shed beside the gas station. A padlock hung open on its latch. I sprinted back, ducked inside. Inside the shed, everything was normal. Tools hung on pegboards, a mop leaned in a bucket. A radio on a shelf displayed 300 in bright green digits. It wasn't frozen. The seconds ticked forward. 301. My breath caught. I stared at it, frozen myself. The radio crackled with static. Then a voice cut through. Anyone hearing this? Not stay where you are. The signal broke into noise. 302. Time was moving in here. I grabbed the hydrant wrench off the wall and ran back. We cranked the hydrant open together. Water blasted out in a violent surge, knocking Ethan backward. I shoved his head under the stream, flushing his eyes while he screamed and cursed. Keep them open, Maya yelled. He sobbed and obeyed. The water washed gasoline down the gutter, diluting the sheen. After a minute, his screaming turned to ragged breathing. "I can see," he whispered. "It's blurry, but I can see." Maya sagged against the hydrant pail. I looked back toward the shed. Time had been moving inside. I checked my phone. 300, still. I ran back to the shed. The radio now read 304. I stepped outside. My phone still said 300. I stepped back in. 305. "Maya," I called. She limped over, Ethan trailing, eyes red and streaming. "What?" she demanded. "Inside," I said. "Time S moving inside." She stared at me. "Show me." We stepped into the shed together. The world shifted subtly, not visually, but in my chest. The air felt looser. The radio read 306. Maya checked her phone. 300. She stepped back outside. 300. She stepped back in. Her phone blinked. 306. We both looked at each other. "It's not the town," she said slowly. "It's zones." "Like coverage," I said. "Like something's blocking something," she corrected. Ethan stood in the doorway, half in, half out. His body jerked, just a twitch, a glitch. "Ethan," I said. He staggered forward into the shed fully. He looked down at his hands, flexing them. "Oh my God," he whispered. Then, without warning, the ground trembled. A low rumble rolled through the street. From the direction of the gas station came a metallic groan. We rushed back outside. The ruptured pump, weakened by the crash and soaked in fuel, finally gave way. It toppled. As it fell, it struck the neighboring pump, which knocked into the third in a domino line. One of them sparked. A bright, white flash snapped in the dark. "Maya," I started. The first pump ignited. Flames roared up in a violent column, feeding on the gasoline pooling across the concrete. Heat slammed into us, stealing breath. The fire raced toward the convenience store wall. And between the blaze and the clinic, between the only moving zone we'd found and the rest of the frozen town, stood a row of motionless people, exactly where they had been at 3:00 a.m. The fire was coming for them, and the shed behind us, the only place where time moved, was already filling with smoke drifting under its warped door. Retreat was no longer an option. We were out of space. Fire isn't subtle. It doesn't creep. It announces itself in heat and roar. And the way oxygen seems to get snatched out of your mouth. The gas station forecourt turned into a bright, violent thing, orange tongues licking up the pump housing, black smoke shoving into the sky. The convenience store's glass reflecting the flames like a second, worse fire trapped inside. Maya coughed hard, one hand braced on her bad shoulder, the other gripping her phone like it was a talisman. Ethan stood a step behind her, blinking watery eyes that had gone pink and raw. His hoodie was speckled with water and grit. I tasted gasoline even through the smoke. Sweet, chemical, nauseating. Between us and the burning pumps, frozen people stood exactly where they'd been at 3:00. A line of them near the sidewalk, Sophie under the diner awning, the bicyclist half leaning on his tipped bike, the dog walker mid-step with the broken leash slack at his feet. A few more by the gas station's door, one hand extended as if reaching for the handle. They weren't obstacles in the normal sense. They were bodies, breathing or not, alive or not. They were human beings placed like road cones in front of a fire. The shed behind us, our one moving pocket, exhaled a thin gray ribbon from the door seam. Smoke was getting in. "We can't stay here," Maya rasped. "Where?" Ethan said, voice high. "Where do we go?" My brain wanted to zoom out into maps, into explanations, into theories. Zones, signals, coverage, a boundary line like an invisible fence. But the heat forced it down to basics. We had fire, we had fuel, we had people who couldn't move. And the clinic, the locked clinic with the defibrillator, the staff, the printer stuck mid-drop, was only a block away on Pine. If there was any place built for emergencies, it was that building. Except it was frozen. Except it was locked. Except we couldn't reach help through phones. And the one thing that had felt like a clue, the shed where time moved, was now becoming a death trap filled with smoke. Maya's eyes flicked to the hydrant half a block south. Water still ran down the gutter in a shimmering ribbon, carrying gasoline sheen away like spilled ink. "Hydrant," she said. "We flood the forecourt. We cool it. We keep it from spreading." "That's not how," Ethan started. "It's not going to put out a gasoline fire," I said, because it wouldn't. You don't fight fuel with water like it's a campfire. But water could cool nearby surfaces, could slow ignition of anything else. It could buy time. Time. The thing the town had stolen. Maya was already moving, limping toward the hydrant with stubborn speed. Her fear taking up space in people's lives had twisted into its opposite. She was making herself responsible for everything because it was the only way she knew to stay steady. I followed. Ethan hesitated, then ran too, slipping once on the wet pavement and catching himself with a curse. At the hydrant, the wrench lay where we dropped it. The hydrant was still open, water blasting into the street in a hard, white stream. Maya grabbed the wrench with her good hand and twisted. The stream shifted slightly, sputtered, then steadied. "We need to aim it," she said through clenched teeth. "There's a hose connection," I said, scanning. Hydrants had outlets for hoses, but we didn't have a hose. We needed something to direct water. "Maintenance shed," Ethan said suddenly. There was a mop bucket, and a long hose, maybe. "A hose in a shed," Maya snapped. "A pressure washer hose," he insisted. I saw something coiled. I remembered the shed. Tools on pegboards, mop bucket, radio with moving time. I hadn't looked long enough to inventory everything, but it was plausible. Gas stations had pressure washers. They cleaned the forecourt. A hose could let us push water toward the fire line. We sprinted back toward the shed. The heat hit us again as we neared the pumps. The fire had grown. Flames clawed sideways now, driven by a faint wind I hadn't noticed before, wind that moved normally, because physics hadn't stopped. Smoke streamed across the street, smearing streetlights into halos. A pop sounded from inside the convenience store. Then another, glass cracking, shelves collapsing, or worse, an aerosol can exploding. I flinched and kept running. At the shed door, Ethan yanked it open. Smoke rolled out in a thick, greasy breath. He recoiled, coughing. I pulled my shirt up over my nose and leaned in. The air inside was hot and bitter. My eyes watered instantly. "Fast," Maya said behind me. Her voice sounded smaller now, strained. I scanned the pegboards through the haze. Wrench outlines, hooks. The pressure washer, yes, there, a squat machine on wheels. The hose was coiled around it like a black snake. I grabbed it. The rubber was warm. It resisted, snagging on itself. The radio on the shelf still glowed, but the numbers were hazy through the smoke. It crackled once, and a voice punched through, clearer than before. "Repeat," If you can hear, get to an enclosed space. Do not cross. Static swallowed the rest. Enclosed space. Do not cross. Cross what? The boundary. I yanked the hose free, dragging the pressure washer a foot before the wheels jammed. The machine bumped, and a small metal canister fire extinguisher fell off a shelf and clanged on the concrete. My heart jumped. Extinguisher, I shouted. Maya lunged forward, but the smoke hit her like a wall. She doubled over, coughing hard, one hand on her knee, the other clutching her shoulder. Ethan stumbled in behind her, trying to help, and his foot caught the extinguisher. It rolled toward the back of the shed, away from us, disappearing into the thickest smoke. Luke, Maya croaked. I crawled on hands and knees because the air was marginally clearer low to the ground. My fingers brushed metal. I snagged the extinguisher by its handle and dragged it back. The label was smeared, but I could make out the type, ABC dry chemical. Not ideal for a fuel fire like foam would be, but better than nothing. It could knock down flames on surfaces, create a brief gap. We had something. I shoved the extinguisher into Maya's hands and hauled the hose out of the shed. Outside, the air felt like an ocean after drowning, cold, clean, alive. Maya staggered, coughing, but she held the extinguisher like it was a weapon. Ethan uncoiled the hose, hands shaking. How do we use the washer? We don't, I said. We use the hose as a redirect, hydrant water into it. That's not going to fit, Ethan said, but he was already trying. We dragged the hose to the hydrant. The connection sizes didn't match. Of course they didn't. Real life didn't do convenient fittings. Maya swore. Then we improvise. She glanced down at the broken leash near the dog walker, thin rope and metal clip. Nearby, a frozen man held a canvas grocery bag mid-swing. The bag hung from his fingers like gravity was optional. Maya stepped to the frozen man and with a quick motion that made me wince, yanked the bag free. The man's fingers didn't curl. He didn't react. The bag came away with a tearing sound, the handle ripping slightly. Sorry, Maya murmured, not to him, just into the air. She dumped the contents onto the sidewalk. Apples that didn't roll, a loaf of bread that didn't bounce. Everything landed with normal thuds, then sat there. She grabbed the canvas and the leash. Wrap it, she said to Ethan. We're making a gasket. Ethan stared at her. You're insane. Do it, she snapped. He did. We wrapped the hose end around the hydrant outlet, stuffed canvas in the gaps, cinched it tight with the leash like a tourniquet. It leaked immediately, water spraying out in cold jets. Maya said, we grabbed a second bag from another frozen person, a scarf from someone's neck, and jammed them in. The leak slowed. Not perfect, but enough. Okay, I said, aim it. Ethan took the hose like a firefighter, feet planted, shoulders squared. He looked ridiculous in pajama pants, soaking wet, face red and raw, holding a makeshift hydrant hose against a burning gas station. Maya limped toward the fire line, extinguisher ready. We don't put it out, she said. We cut it off. We keep it from reaching the store. We keep it from reaching them. She nodded at the frozen people. I didn't know if they were alive. Maya didn't know, but she couldn't tolerate doing nothing. I stayed behind her, keeping one eye on the hose, one on the flames. On my count, Maya said. She moved closer to the pumps, close enough that heat shimmered the air between her and the fire, close enough that her eyelashes glinted in the orange light. The fire had wrapped around the base of the toppled pump. Gasoline still fed it in thin streams that glittered like snakeskin. Maya pulled the pin. Her hand trembled, pain and adrenaline. 1, she said. Ethan tightened his grip. 2, I swallowed, throat raw. 3, Maya squeezed the extinguisher lever and swept the nozzle at the base of the flames. A white cloud erupted, dry chemical powder blasting out, coating the pump base and forecourt like sudden snow. Flames sputtered, retreated, then flared again at the edges. Now, I yelled at Ethan. Ethan opened the hydrant feed further. Water surged into the hose, and the hose bucked like a living thing. He staggered, nearly losing control, then locked his elbows and aimed. A hard stream of water slammed into the forecourt, pushing powder and gasoline sheen outward. It didn't put the flames out where fuel still fed them, but it cooled the concrete, drove burning liquid away from the frozen pedestrians, created a wet barrier. Maya advanced another step, coughing, eyes squinting. Luke, she said, voice sharp. Move them. What? The people near the store, she said. If the fire jumps, move them away. I stared at the nearest frozen man hand on the gas station door, body angled forward as if about to step inside. Moving them felt like violating something fundamental, like touching a museum display behind glass. But we'd already done that. We de-dragged Sophie. We de-moved the bicyclist. And the dog, my stomach tightened at the dog. I ran. The frozen man at the door was heavier than he looked. When I pulled him, he came, but slowly, like he was stuck in thick mud. I grunted, slipping on wet pavement, and dragged him back toward the sidewalk. His shoes squeaked. His jacket rustled. He didn't blink. I dragged another, an elderly woman with a cane frozen mid-lift. She was frighteningly light. I moved her behind the concrete trash can by the curb, as if that would shield her from fire. Behind me, Maya kept blasting the extinguisher, carving brief gaps in the flame while Ethan kept water streaming, widening the wet barrier. Keep it steady, Maya shouted. I'm trying, Ethan yelled back, voice cracking. The hose jerked again. The makeshift gasket at the hydrant connection slipped. Water sprayed sideways, soaking Ethan's face. He yelped, and the hose swung, the stream arcing wildly. The water hit the burning pump directly, splashing gasoline outward in a shimmering fan. Flames leapt. Not huge, just a sudden flare that licked across the forecourt, toward the line of frozen people like a fast, hungry thought. Maya cursed. She turned the extinguisher toward it, blasting powder. The flare died back, sputtering. But the surge of heat had done something else. The convenience store's front glass, already stressed, shattered outward with a loud, cracking whoop. A wave of hot air rolled across us. I flinched, arms up, expecting shards. Most of the glass fell and stopped midair, hanging in a glittering arc just inches from the ground. It hovered like a frozen fountain of knives. My breath caught. For half a second, it looked like the world had decided to become supernatural after all. Then one piece, only one, fell all the way down and clinked on the pavement. And another. Then the whole arc dropped at once, not suspended by magic, but by something simpler. The glass had been stuck in a sheet of plastic film. Safety glass. Laminated. It had held, then finally tore. Realistic, terrifying, explainable. Maya didn't spare it a glance. She was already moving. Luke, she shouted. The store, inside, shelves of chips and candy were visible through smoke. A small beer cooler glowed. A rack of lighters sat by the counter. Lighters. Propane canisters for camping on a display near the back if they had them. If that goes, Maya gasped, it's a blast. I ran to the door, which was now half open, glass cracked and dangling. The door should have been locked, but the lock mechanism looked bent, and the frame had warped from heat. It wasn't locked anymore. I hesitated, standing at the threshold, because I remembered the radio voice. Get to an enclosed space. Do not cross what? If the town was zoned and the shed was one moving pocket, then maybe enclosed spaces were pockets. Maybe the inside of the store was another. Or maybe crossing into it would do something worse, trap me, freeze me. My fear of calm surged. My body wanted to lock up. Luke, Maya screamed. Go, I went. Inside, the air was hotter, smoke thicker. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, but their hum sounded uneven, like a recording warping. The digital clock over the counter read 3:00. The clerk stood frozen behind the register, one hand hovering over the lottery scratchers. But something else was different. The ceiling fan above the aisle was turning. Slowly, unevenly, but turning. I stared at it, stunned. Time was moving in here too. A moving pocket. Enclosed spaces. My phone in my pocket buzzed, sudden and violent. I yanked it out. 3:12. The number punched me in the gut. Time had jumped. My notifications flooded in all at once. Missed calls, texts, unsent messages. Like a dam breaking. I didn't have time to read them. I grabbed the nearest fire extinguisher mounted by the door, a smaller one than the shed S, but still. I yanked it free, and I saw the display of camping fuel canisters near the back, green bottles, small propane tanks stacked neatly. If the fire reached these, it would be chaos. I ran down the aisle, coughing, eyes streaming, and started pulling them off the shelf, shoving them into a rolling basket that sat abandoned mid-aisle. The basket moved normally. Wheels squeaked. My arms trembled with effort. The canisters were cold to the touch, ironically, but my skin felt hot, prickling. I shoved the basket toward the back door and exit to the alley. The back door had a crash bar. I slammed it. It didn't budge. I hit it again. Nothing. The crash bar was frozen mid-press. The mechanism didn't travel. The door, like the clinic, like everything else, had its own rules. My throat tightened. Smoke thickened, swirling near the ceiling. The fan stuttered. I turned back toward the front, dragging the basket toward the door we'd come through. As I did, I caught movement, real movement, near the register. The clerk's eyes shifted, just slightly. My stomach dropped. Ma'am, I croaked. Her mouth trembled as if trying to form a word. She didn't speak. She didn't step. But her eyes were moving. The cost of the zone boundaries. The glitch Ethan had shown at the shed door. Maybe heat, maybe enclosure, maybe proximity to a moving person triggered partial reboot. Or maybe the fire was changing the rules. Hang on, I said stupidly, like she could answer. I dragged the basket faster, coughing so hard my ribs hurt. At the front door, I shoved it through the warped frame. The wheel caught on broken glass. I kicked it free. Outside, the world slammed back into roar and heat. Maya saw the basket and shouted something I couldn't hear over the fire. I shoved the extinguisher into her hands and pointed toward the basket. Propane, I croaked. Get it out. Ethan was still fighting the hose. His arms were shaking violently now. The gasket leaked badly, spraying water in a mist that glittered in the firelight. We're losing it, he screamed. Maya limped to the basket and started dragging it away from the store, toward the open street, away from the cluster of frozen people we'd moved. The basket rolled, then snagged on a crack in the pavement. Maya yanked too hard with her injured shoulder and cried out, stumbling. She caught herself, teeth clenched, eyes bright with pain. I ran to help, grabbed the basket handle with her. Together, we dragged the propane canisters away, leaving wet streaks on the pavement. Behind us, the fire flared again, reaching higher. The toppled pump fully collapsed, and with it, a new jet of gasoline spurted, feeding flames toward the store's interior. Maya spun, raised the extinguisher, and blasted at the base, sweeping powder in a wide arc. The flame line stuttered. Ethan shouted, "Luke, help!" The hose had twisted. The stream weakened to a pathetic sputter. I sprinted to the hydrant connection. The canvas gasket had blown out, soaked and tearing. Water sprayed sideways in a hard, cold sheet. I jammed my hands into the gap, trying to hold it, and the pressure slammed into my palms like a hammer. The force drove my fingers back. My skin felt like it was tearing. "Wrap it," I yelled. Ethan threw the leash at me. I fumbled it, fingers numb and slick. My hands shook. The leash slipped in the spray. Maya ran back, face pale, and without a word, she pressed her body against the hydrant outlet, using her weight like a clamp. She winced, breath hissing through her teeth. "Do it," she said, voice low. I looped the leash around the hose and hydrant, cinched it tight, used the scarf as padding. My fingers screamed. The cold water made them ache and burn simultaneously. The leak slowed. The stream steadied. Ethan grabbed the hose again and aimed it back toward the forecourt, cutting a wet barrier between the fire and the frozen pedestrians. For a moment, just a moment, the fire seemed contained. Not out, never out, but not spreading. The roar dropped a notch. The heat eased. In that brief lull, I heard something else. A siren, distant, warped by distance and smoke, but unmistakable. Maya's eyes widened. "You hear that?" "Yes," I said, throat raw. But the siren didn't get louder. It stayed at the same volume, like it was looping. Like the green light, like the blinker. A recorded sound, not rescue. Ethan's face crumpled. "No," he whispered. Maya's jaw set. "We finished this ourselves." Then the point of no return arrived, not as a dramatic revelation, but as a simple, brutal reality. The convenience store roof began to sag. It wasn't obvious at first, just a slight bowing in the metal awning above the door, a groan like a ship's hull. Then the awning gave way. It collapsed outward with a crash, scattering debris across the sidewalk, debris that didn't freeze, because physics didn't care about whatever was happening to people. A beam slammed into the street with a heavy thunk. The beam landed directly across the route back to the clinic on Pine, blocking the corner. Behind it, flames licked up the store wall, hungry and bright. A retreat path back past Main, back toward the clinic, back toward whatever we thought safe, was now a wall of fire and fallen metal. We were trapped on this side of the blaze, hemmed in by frozen bodies, burning fuel, and the single moving pocket of the shed that was now fully smoking. Maya stared at the blocked street, and something in her expression shifted acceptance, maybe, or the moment a professional realizes she's past the part where protocols help. "Okay," she said softly. "Okay." She looked at me, then at Ethan. "We can't go back," she said, "so we go forward." "Forward where?" Ethan demanded, voice breaking. Maya nodded toward the convenience store, toward the doorway I'd just come out of, now belching smoke. "Enclosed spaces," she said, recalling the radio. "Moving pockets." "You want us to go inside?" I said, incredulous. "It's on fire." "Not the front," she said. "The back, the cooler, the concrete storage room. Anything that buys us air and time." My mind flashed to the back door that wouldn't open, the frozen crash bar. to the clerk's eyes shifting, to my phone showing 312 inside, then snapping back outside. Zones within zones. "Luke," Maya said, and her voice softened for the first time in hours. "If we stay out here, the smoke gets us. If the fire jumps again, it gets us. If the pumps explode, it gets us. We need a pocket, a place where time moved, a place where phones worked, a place where we might hear that radio voice again." I didn't want to go back in. Every instinct screamed that stepping into a burning building was how people died. But the blocked street and the spreading fire had made the decision for us. The cost had already started. Maya's bleeding shoulder, Ethan's burned eyes, my raw, split hands. The emotional cost, seeing people frozen like mannequins, while we dragged them like furniture, sat in my stomach like stones. I looked at Sophie under the diner awning, still mid-laugh, now dusted with dry chemical powder like snow. "We're doing this," I said, voice hoarse. Maya nodded once. Ethan hesitated, then gave a shaky nod too. We ran for the store entrance together, ducking under hanging shards of safety glass, stepping over debris, racing toward the only option left. Behind us, the fire roared, and the town, frozen, silent, helpless, waited at 3:00 a.m. like it had always planned to. Inside the convenience store, the air changed. Not cleaner smoke still crawled along the ceiling, and the place reeked of melted plastic and burned sugar, but it moved. It had currents. It felt like breathing in a room where the fan is actually doing something, where time hasn't been pinned to a single minute like a butterfly. The ceiling fan above aisle 3 spun in a stuttering circle. The fluorescent lights flickered in a way that implied an unstable power supply, not a frozen one. Somewhere behind the counter, the little microwave clock blinked and blessedly didn't say 3:00. 3:18. My phone vibrated again and again with delayed life, as if it was clawing its way back to relevance. A voicemail icon, a dozen texts, a flood of "Where are you?" and "Are you okay?" And one from the school principal that somehow made me laugh and almost throw up at the same time. "Don't forget. Fire drill tomorrow." Maya shoved the door closed behind us with her shoulder. The warped frame didn't latch properly, but it slowed the smoke. Ethan slid down the end cap display and sat on the floor, hands over his face. He was shaking, not dramatic shaking, the kind you get when adrenaline unthreads from your body and you realize you're wet, cold, injured, and alive by accident. Maya stood for a second like she couldn't decide what to do with her arms. Her right shoulder was swollen now, the sleeve stuck to her skin with drying blood. Her breathing had a wheeze under it that hadn't been there earlier. She tried to hide it, which was almost funny, considering she'd just been a human clamp on a hydrant. "We need air," she said hoarsely. "Back room, cooler." I nodded and led them down the narrow aisle toward the beer cooler, because it was the most solid thing in the building. Thick insulated walls, heavy door, and a steady hum that sounded like normal life. As we moved, I glanced through the front windows. Outside, the gas station forecourt was an angry orange battlefield. The fire still burned, but the water barrier had forced it into a smaller, contained shape. Flames licked at the collapsed awning debris, but hadn't jumped into the street. And the frozen townspeople, they were still there, dusty now with extinguisher powder, wet in places from the overspray. Some had been dragged behind trash cans or onto the sidewalk. The The dog lay near the curb like a dropped coat. Everything looked like it had happened hours ago, but my phone told me it had been less than 20 minutes. We reached the cooler. The door opened when I pulled it. Cold air rolled out, honest and steady. It smelled like beer and citrus and cardboard. Ethan made a small sound of relief and stepped inside immediately. Maya hesitated, then followed, leaning her shoulder against the door frame. I stepped in last and pulled the cooler door almost shut, leaving it cracked just enough to breathe and listen. The world outside went quieter. Not silent, never silent, but muted, like someone turned the volume down on the fire. The cooler's hum became the dominant sound, comforting in a way that annoyed me. I didn't want comfort. Comfort meant my brain would finally have room to process what we'd just done. Maya slid to the floor, back against the shelves of canned energy drinks. Her face was pale under the harsh cooler light. "You're in shock," I said. She gave me a look that tried to be sharp, but it sagged halfway. "I'm fine." "Say I'm fine again," Ethan muttered, voice thick. "It'll fix everything." Maya didn't answer. She stared down at her hands like she was taking inventory of them. Powder residue, small cuts, blood. "I need to call," she said after a moment, and the words came out with effort. Her phone was in her pocket. She pulled it out and stared at the screen as if expecting it to lie to her. It didn't. Time moved. Signal bars. She hit 911. This time it rang. Once, twice. A voice clicked on, calm and impossibly ordinary. 911, what's your emergency?" Maya blinked like she couldn't reconcile the voice with the frozen bodies outside. "We have a gas station fire," she said, and her professional tone snapped into place with muscle memory. "Multiple casualties. People unresponsive in the street." Her voice broke on the word people. She swallowed. "We need fire and EMS immediately." "Ma'am, what's your location?" Maya gave it. Main Street, Riverbend. The gas station by the diner. She described the crash, the leak, the fire. She did not say. Also, the entire town stopped moving at 3:00 a.m. Not at first. Because once you say that out loud to a dispatcher, you lose control of your credibility. And Maya's need to be useful, her fear of taking up too much space, made her cling to the part that sounded believable. Then the dispatcher asked, "How many patients?" Maya stared at me. I stared back. "Unknown," Maya said carefully. "Dozens. We have unresponsive persons not reacting to stimuli." There was a pause, a soft shift in tone. "Are they unconscious?" Maya's jaw tightened. "I can't determine. They're motionless." The dispatcher asked if there were hazards. Maya said yes, fire, smoke, fuel. She said we were sheltering in the convenience store cooler. The dispatcher said, "Stay on the line." And for the first time since 3:00, someone told us what to do who wasn't us. It should have been comforting. Instead, it made my hands start shaking. Because now the story would leave our control and become paperwork and questions and looks that said, "Are you sure?" Through the cracked cooler door, I heard the muffled whoop of a siren. A real one this time. It got louder. It didn't loop. Ethan made a noise that was half laugh, half sob, and pressed his forehead against the cold metal shelf. "Thank God," he whispered. Maya didn't say thank God. She just kept talking to the dispatcher, voice steadying with every sentence. I sat there, knees pulled up, and watched condensation bead on a can of soda. It slid down in a normal, obedient line. Then, faintly, I heard something else. The store's front door banging once, not from wind, but from heat shifting the warped frame. The cooler hummed. Time passed. Minutes, not a frozen instant. And somewhere in those minutes, the part of me that didn't trust calm started to whisper that this calm, this return to normal, was not a victory. It was a transition. The fire department arrived first. I could tell because the sound outside changed. The fire's roar fought with new noises, hoses slapping pavement, radio chatter, boots running. The dispatcher said, "Units are on scene." Then another voice on the phone, closer to the chaos. "Ma'am, can you come to the front door?" Maya hesitated. Her shoulder twitched with pain. "Luke," she said quietly, "help me up." I did. My hands hurt when I gripped her arm. I'd skinned my palms raw at the hydrant, and now every touch felt like sandpaper. We stepped out of the cooler and into the store again. The ceiling fans spun faster now, as if the building had decided to cooperate. Smoke was thinner near the floor. Ethan followed, slower. At the front door, Maya shouted, "In here." A firefighter's silhouette appeared through the smoky glass. The door opened with a jolt, and cold air poured in. 2 firefighters in full gear stepped inside, faces hidden behind masks, voices distorted through radios. Behind them, a paramedic in a yellow coat and no mask, eyes wide as she took in the frozen clerk behind the counter. "Ma'am," the paramedic said, "are you injured?" Maya started to answer. Then her eyes flicked past them out to Main Street. Her face changed. Not fear, something worse. A grief she didn't have time to earn. Because outside, under the harsh wash of emergency lights, the tableau was being discovered. Firefighters moved around frozen bodies like they were navigating wreckage. One knelt beside the dog walker and tried to lift his arm. The arm didn't rise easily. It resisted like thick rubber. A firefighter swore, muffled behind his mask, and tried again. A paramedic reached toward Sophie. Sophie's phone still lay on the sidewalk where it had fallen, screen cracked, frozen on a bright camera interface. And then, like a switched-on movie, something changed. Not everything, just enough to make the hairs on my arms lift. Sophie blinked. Once, slow. Her raised hand dropped an inch, as if gravity had suddenly remembered her. She inhaled sharply, like someone surfacing from deep water, and her first sound was not a scream. It was a wet, confused cough. The paramedic jumped back. "She's breathing." More movement rippled down the line of frozen people like a wave hitting a shore. A bicyclist's foot slapped down onto pavement. The dog walker's knee buckled, and he fell, catching himself on hands that trembled. Some people collapsed entirely, crumpling, as if their bodies were only now acknowledging they'd been standing too long without permission. Others swayed, blinking hard, faces slack with disorientation. One man tried to speak and only managed a hoarse noise. No one had a dramatic seizure or a movie-perfect fainting spell. It looked like what it was, a mass medical event, hypoxia, toxin exposure, some neurological shutdown, releasing unevenly, unpredictably. Maya stepped forward instinctively despite her shoulder. "Sit down," she commanded, voice cutting through the chaos. "Don't move fast. Breathe. Someone get oxygen." A firefighter grabbed her gently by the arm. "Ma'am, you need to step back. You're bleeding." Maya almost argued. Then she glanced down at her sleeve, really saw the blood, and nodded once like she'd been given new information. Ethan made a raw sound behind me. "I hit the pump," he whispered. "I know," I said, because I didn't know what else to give him. "You didn't cause this." He didn't look convinced. He stared at the dog on the pavement as if waiting for it to blink too. It didn't. The dog stayed motionless, and that was its own kind of horror, because it didn't fit the pattern of everyone wakes up. It was just gone. A paramedic knelt beside it anyway, checked quickly, then looked away with a small head shake. Maya saw that and turned her face toward her shoulder, as if she could hide from it. Outside, a lieutenant barked orders. Hoses sprayed foam now, proper foam, smothering fuel flames. The fire shrank. It didn't disappear, fire never does instantly, but it retreated, forced into submission by people who had tools and training and enough bodies to matter. The gas station became manageable again. The town did not, because as people regained motion, their voices rose into a new kind of noise. Confused questions, shouts, a woman sobbing, someone vomiting into the gutter, a man screaming a name, Jess, Jess, as if he'd misplaced someone in a grocery store. It was chaos, but it was human chaos, and that made it both better and worse. Better because it meant life. Worse because life comes with memory, and we were the ones who had moved through their frozen bodies, dragged them, repositioned them, decided who went behind a trash can and who stayed in the street. Decisions they hadn't consented to. A police cruiser rolled up and stopped crookedly near the diner. The officer got out and froze, not metaphorically, because he saw the scene and didn't understand it. He put his hand on his radio like it might explain, and he saw Maya bleeding, Ethan trembling, me standing with raw hands and a soot-streaked face, and he stepped toward us. "Who are you?" he demanded, voice firm because that's what police voices do when the world is wrong. Maya spoke first. "Maya Patel, nurse at Riverbend. She swallowed. We tried to stop the fire." The officer's eyes flicked from her to Ethan. "And you?" Ethan flinched. "Ethan Ward. I was driving. I didn't see anyone moving. I thought it was empty." The officer's gaze snapped to mine. "And you?" "Luke Mercer," I said. My voice sounded rough, like it had been scraped. "We called 911 from inside the cooler. Phones didn't work outside." The officer looked past us at the moving, collapsing townspeople. His jaw worked. "Why weren't you like them?" It wasn't an accusation yet. It was a question with an accusation hiding inside. I didn't have a good answer. Maya didn't either. So she gave the only truth she could. "We don't know." The officer stared at us a second longer, then spoke into his radio, voice lower. "We have mass casualty, possible chemical exposure. People were unresponsive. They're coming around now. Chemical exposure." It sounded so normal when you said it like that. And maybe that's what it was. Maybe the town's water system had been contaminated. Maybe a faulty industrial valve in the gas stations, underground tanks released fumes that pooled on Main in the cold night air. Maybe the wind direction and the fact that we'd been near the clinic's mechanical exhaust or the shed's ventilation had spared us. Maybe the zones were airflow patterns and building pressure, not science fiction. Maybe. I would cling to that maybe later, because it was the only explanation that kept my brain from spinning off into impossible places. An ambulance arrived, and the paramedics insisted on checking Maya's shoulder. They cleaned it right there under the diner awning, same awning Sophie had been frozen under, now sitting on the curb with a blanket around her shoulders, shivering violently. Sophie looked up at me once. Her eyes were bright with confusion and a kind of fear. I recognized fear of missing time. "What happened?" she whispered. I opened my mouth and closed it again. Because how do you tell someone They were paused like a screen, while you dragged them by the arm to keep them from being hit by a car. "We had a fire," I said finally. You weren't moving, but you're back." Her brows knit. "I was laughing," she said, like it was a question. I remember laughing, and then nothing." The paramedic adjusted her blanket. "You're going to the hospital," she said gently, not offering choice. Sophie looked at the foam-covered pumps, the flashing lights, the bodies being guided to sit down, and then her eyes went to the spot where the dog had been. Her face crumpled. Maya sat on the back bumper of the ambulance as they taped her shoulder and told her she'd need stitches. She nodded through it, too still, eyes tracking the scene like she was trying to store it all in a jar so she could deal with it later. Ethan sat on the curb, head in hands, while a paramedic flushed his eyes again with saline. He kept whispering, "I didn't see them," over and over. I stood a few feet away and stared at my phone. It read 3:41, then 3:42. Normal time. Except it didn't feel normal. It felt like a trick, because on the gas station sign down the street, the digital price numbers still glowed, and the small embedded clock at the bottom still read 3:00. I stared at it until my eyes watered. Smoke, maybe, or something else. I pointed it out to a firefighter when he walked past. "Hey," I said. "That clock," he glanced, then kept moving. "Those things glitch all the time," he called back without slowing. Maybe he was right. Maybe it was nothing. But it stayed that way as the foam spread, as the hoses wound up, as people were loaded into ambulances. The town began to move again, to talk again, to suffer again. And that clock stayed stuck. Later, hours later, when the sun finally came up like it always did, pinking the smoke haze and turning the powdered extinguisher residue into dull gray on the sidewalks, I sat on the curb outside the clinic. The clinic doors were open now. The interior looked normal in daylight, just messy, like a place that had lived through a night shift. The receptionist, Carla Jensen, sat inside with a blanket around her shoulders, answering questions from a detective with tired eyes. She looked older than she had at 2:59. Maya was inside too, getting her shoulder stitched by a doctor whose hands moved quickly and whose face stayed carefully blank. Professional denial, maybe, or just survival. Ethan had been taken to the hospital for observation. The officer had told him, not unkindly, that there would be questions. There always are after a fire. As for me, a police sergeant took my statement twice, once in the early chaos, once again when things settled, because my first version had too much stumbling and not enough sequence. He wanted geography. Who was where, when the crash happened, where the people were standing, where we moved them, where the fire spread, where the water went. I gave him a map with my words, because I couldn't give him anything else. He listened, wrote, nodded. Then, quietly, he asked, "You said your phone didn't work outside, but it did inside the store." "Yes." "And you said the shed clock moved, but the street clocks did." "Yes." He stared at his notebook a second, then closed it. Okay. He didn't tell me what that meant. He didn't tell me if it fit a pattern. He didn't tell me if it was useful. But as he walked away, I heard him say to another officer, "Get the environmental guys. Check for gas leaks. Sewer, anything, environmental, gas leaks, sewer." Those words should have made me feel better. They didn't. Because later that day, when I finally went home and sat on my bed with my shoes still on, too tired to move, my body did the thing it always did. It prepared for impact. I stared at my ceiling and waited for the moment calm would betray me. At 2:58 a.m. the next night, I woke up. My heart was already running. I grabbed my phone without thinking. The screen lit, 2:59. I watched it like it was a bomb timer. It ticked over, 3:00, then 3:01. Nothing stopped. No one froze. My lungs finally released a breath I hadn't known I was holding. And still, I couldn't shake the image of that gas station sign. The clock stuck at 3:00 while everything else moved on. When I closed my eyes, I could still see it. Not as a supernatural omen, as a reminder that even when reality resumes, some systems don't. Some errors persist quietly in the background, waiting for the right conditions to show themselves again. And that's what stayed with me more than the fire, more than the frozen bodies, more than the dog that didn't wake up. The idea that the world could be mostly normal, mostly, with one small part still stuck, insisting on a moment that wouldn't pass. That's it for this nightmare. If you enjoyed it, please like the video, subscribe to Mia Horror Stories, and turn on notifications. It really helps keep the stories alive. And don't stop here. Dive into another one of our videos and keep the fear going.